Good morning, good night, or good evening, wherever you are. Welcome, everyone, to the second INSAF webinar. My name is Jyotsna Kapoor, and I teach at Southern Illinois University. I'm also a member of INSAF, that is the International Solidarity for Academic Freedom in India. We are a diverse group of diasporic Indians located in different parts of the world, but currently mainly in Europe and North America. Some of us are academics, some are professionals in various fields. We're all deeply concerned and upset and worried and anxious with the increasing assaults on academic freedoms in India, in particular attacks on anti-caste academics and scholars from minority backgrounds. We consider it our obligation to raise our voices, to direct international attention, not only to what is happening in India in terms of infringements on academic freedom, but also to the growing dissemination of anti-intellectual, regressive political thought in the name of Indian culture and history at educational and research institutions all around the world. We believe that academic freedom is inextricably linked to social justice, and that knowledge production and formation are bound to the fostering of our social lives. So it's not simply a personal issue, but it's a political and a social issue. This webinar is co-hosted by INSAF India, Ambedkar King Study Circle in California, Scholars at Risk, the British Association for South Asian Studies, the Amsterdam School of Cultural Analysis, University of Amsterdam, the Forum of Education in Asia, UCL, and the Southern Illinois University's honors program. So before we start, I just have to make a couple of logistical announcements. Please post your questions in the Q&A box and not in the chat box. And now I'm going to hand it over to my friend and comrade, Ashok Kumbabu, who's going to be hosting the panel. I will be translating in Punjabi for Harinder Bindu. Over to you, Ashok.
Thank you, Jyotsna. Thank you very much. So welcome all. My name is Ashok Kumbamu. I'm a sociologist by training. I've been working in the field of agrarian studies for the past 15 years. I'm so glad to moderate today's session on why academics need to be part of farmers' protest in India. So to discuss various dimensions of this topic, we have 4 panelists with us. Let me quickly introduce them. First, Harinder Bindu, President of Bharatiya Kisan Union, Ekta Ugrahan, Women's Wing. She's joining us from Tekri border. As Jyotsna mentioned, Harinder will be speaking in Punjabi, but our colleague Jyotsna will be translating that into English for us. We also have Viju Krishnan, sorry, All India Joint Secretary, All India Kisan Sabha. We have Surinder Jotka, Professor of Sociology at Jawaharlal Nehru University, Delhi. Shreya Sinha, Research Associate, the Department of Geography at University of University of Cambridge, UK. So before we start our discussion, I would like to let you know that, as Jyotsna mentioned, INSAF, without any reservations, extends its solidarity to the farmers' protest. We see they have been building and expanding the kind of struggle that we haven't seen in the recent past in the Indian political landscape. I sincerely salute them for their courage to fight against the new farm laws, and for sowing the seeds of hope in the times of despair. I personally stand with them for not only as a member of academic community, but also as a son of a farmer. So before we start the discussion, I would like to start off with a personal note. So whenever I teach, the first thing I tell my students or my mentees that you have to develop your own toolkit, which means you have to craft your own lens or conceptual frames to better understand the world. But now the concept of toolkits itself has become problematic. In fact, it is so criminalized, as we have seen in recent cases. So there's growing surveillance and control over our ideas, what we should think or how we should think and how we should present. And also we have been following news related to restrictions on academic participation in international online conferences and seminars. We see all these developments are as imminent threat to our academic freedom. So in this context, I would like to ask our panelists to help us connect the dots between the farmers' protest, academic freedom, and political activism. Or in short, what is wrong with the farm laws? And why do you think the academic community should respond to the farmers' protest? So I will start, I would like all the panelists to address this broader question of why academics should be a part of the struggle. So I will start with Arinder Bindu, Viju Krishnan, Surendra Jorka, and Shreya Sinha. So maybe you can take turns one after other and help us to connect these dots, and we are here to learn from you. Harinder ji.
So Harinder, Ashok ने कहा कि ਜਦੋਂ ਆਪਣੀ ਕਲਾਸ ਲੈਂਦੇ ਨੇ ਤੇ ਬੱਚਿਆਂ ਨੂੰ ਜਾਂ ਸਟੂਡੈਂਟਸ ਨੂੰ ਕਹਿੰਦੇ ਨੇ ਕਿ ਤੁਸੀਂ ਆਪਣੀ ਇੱਕ ਟੂਲ ਕਿਟ ਤਿਆਰ ਕਰੋ, ਮਤਲਬ ਇੱਕ ਆਪਣਾ ਸੋਚਣ ਦਾ ਢੰਗ ਤਿਆਰ ਕਰੋ ਜਿਸ ਦੇ ਨਾਲ ਤੁਸੀਂ ਫਿਰ ਦੁਨੀਆ ਨੂੰ ਮਿਲ ਸਕਦੇ ਹੋ ਤੇ ਆਪਣੀ ਜ਼ਿੰਦਗੀ ਜੀ ਸਕਦੇ ਹੋ। ਤੇ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਦਾ ਸਵਾਲ ਹੈ ਕਿ ਜਿਹੜੇ ਸਟੂਡੈਂਟਸ ਨੇ, ਟੀਚਰ ਨੇ, ਜਿਹੜੇ ਪੜ੍ਹਾਉਂਦੇ ਨੇ ਤੇ ਪੜ੍ਹਦੇ ਨੇ, ਜਿਹੜੇ ਐਕੈਡੈਮਿਕਸ ਨੇ, ਉਹਨਾਂ ਦਾ ਕੀ ਰੋਲ ਹੈ? ਉਹਨਾਂ ਨੂੰ ਤੁਹਾਡੇ ਨਾਲ ਕਿਉਂ ਜੋੜਨਾ ਚਾਹੀਦਾ ਤੇ ਤੁਹਾਡੀ ਵੀ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਤੋਂ ਕੀ ਐਕਸਪੈਕਟੇਸ਼ਨਸ ਨੇ ਜਾਂ ਕੀ ਉਮੀਦ ਹੈ? ਤੁਸੀਂ ਮਿਊਟਡ ਹੈਗੇ ਹੋ।
Ashok should be able to unmute her. Okay. Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
ਹਾਂਜੀ, ਅਸੀਂ ਜਿਹੜਾ ਤੁਸੀਂ ਸਾਨੂੰ ਕਿਹਾ ਹੈਗਾ ਕਿ ਟੀਚਰ ਤੁਹਾਡੇ ਨਾਲ ਕਿਉਂ ਜੁੜਦੇ ਆ ਜਾਂ ਤੁਸੀਂ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਨੂੰ ਕਿਵੇਂ ਸੋਚਦੇ ਹੋ ਟੂਲ ਕਿੱਟ ਵਗੈਰਾ, ਜਾਂ ਉਹਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਤੁਸੀਂ ਉਹਦੇ ਬਾਰੇ ਕਿਵੇਂ ਸੋਚਦੇ ਹੋ ਕਿ ਅਸੀਂ ਇਸ ਕਿਸਾਨ ਅੰਦੋਲਨ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਕਾਫੀ ਲੰਮੇ ਸਮੇਂ ਤੋਂ ਲੱਗੇ ਹੋਏ ਹੈਗੇ ਆ, ਤਾਂ ਅਸੀਂ ਇਹਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਇਹ ਦੇਖਦੇ ਹੈਗੇ ਆ ਕਿ ਜਿਹੜੀ ਇਹ ਲੜਾਈ ਹੈ, ਜਿਹੜੀ ਇਹ ਅਸੀਂ ਅੰਦੋਲਨ ਕਰ ਰਹੇ ਹਾਂ ਜਾਂ ਸਾਡੇ ਤੇ ਜੋ ਜ਼ਬਰ ਹੋ ਰਿਹਾ ਹੈ, ਹਮਲਾ ਹੋ ਰਿਹਾ, ਸਾਡੇ ਤੇ ਨੀਤੀਆਂ ਦਾ ਹਮਲਾ ਹੋ ਰਿਹਾ ਹੈ, ਉਹ ਅਸੀਂ ਇਕੱਲੇ ਕਿਸਾਨ ਇਹਨੂੰ ਨਹੀਂ ਰੋਕ ਸਕਦੇ ਹੈਗੇ। ਸਾਡੇ ਇਕੱਲਿਆਂ ਦੇ ਲੜਨ ਨਾਲ ਇਹ ਲੜਾਈ ਜਿਹੜੀ ਹੱਲ ਨਹੀਂ ਹੋਣੀ। ਇਸ ਕਰਕੇ ਕਿ ਜਿਹੜੇ ਟੀਚਰ ਨੇ, ਬੁੱਧੀਜੀਵੀ ਨੇ, ਪੱਤਰਕਾਰ ਨੇ, ਵਿਦਿਆਰਥੀ ਨੇ, ਨੌਜਵਾਨ ਨੇ, ਔਰਤਾਂ ਨੇ, ਕਿ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਦਾ ਸਾਰਿਆਂ ਦਾ ਇਕਜੁੱਟ ਹੋ ਕੇ ਇਸ ਹਮਲੇ ਦੇ ਖਿਲਾਫ ਆਪਦੇ ਪੱਧਰ ਤੇ ਇਸ ਅੰਦੋਲਨ ਨੂੰ ਸਹਿਯੋਗ ਕਰਨਾ, ਇਹਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਤਾਕਤ ਨੂੰ ਹੋਰ ਵੱਡੇ ਕਰਨਾ ਤੇ ਵੱਡਾ ਹੋ ਕੇ ਇਸ ਨੂੰ ਹੋਰ ਵੱਡੀ ਪੱਧਰ ਤੇ ਲੜਨਾ, ਜਿਹਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਵੱਖ-ਵੱਖ ਹਰ ਕੋਈ ਆਪਣਾ ਵੱਖ-ਵੱਖ ਤਰ੍ਹਾਂ ਦਾ ਜਿਹੜਾ ਰੋਲ ਹੈ ਉਹ ਦੇ ਸਕੇ ਤੇ ਵੱਖ-ਵੱਖ ਢੰਗਾਂ ਦੇ ਨਾਲ ਇਹਨੂੰ ਹੋਰ ਵਿਸਾਲ ਤੇ ਵਿਸਥਾਰ ਇਹਦਾ ਕੀਤਾ ਜਾ ਸਕੇ।
The struggle that we are waging right now and the attacks on us are so widespread that we cannot fight this alone. And we need everyone at different levels to support us, teachers, students, young people, women, children. Everyone has to join this so that we can raise the struggle to another level and to expand it.
Vijayji.
Yeah, I think Comrade Harinder rightly mentioned every bit of solidarity is very important. We are against a very strong adversary, and which is using every power at its disposal to try and put down any form of democratic protest. And as far as academic, the INSAF is concerned, or groups like this, I think the movement here should also salute all of you for deciding to speak up for the farmers, not just on the issue of academic freedom, but also the broader struggles that the people are launching in our country as of now. We have seen how from 2014 itself, first the attacks were on rationalists, writers, journalists. Then it shifted to attacks on minorities and Dalits. Women were attacked. And now you have the working class and the peasantry being attacked in a big way. When the whole world is in a situation of lockdown, you have the doors being unlocked for corporate loot. This is the time when the working class and the peasantry are under lockdown. They are bringing these acts which totally withdrawing the rights of the peasantry and the working class. If you see the hard-won rights of the working class, especially 8 hours of work, 8 hours of leisure, and no cut in pay, that was something which came up from 1880s. The Chicago martyrs and so on, great struggles. And now this government under the lockdown want to make the workers work 12 hours of a day and withdraw all the rights that they have. So this is something which every section has to speak out against. And these acts itself question the very future of agriculture in our country, peasant-driven agriculture in our country, and food security of our country. That is why you are seeing this kind of a massive resistance that is coming from farmers. And this is not something which affects only the farmers of our country. It affects every section of the population in our country. Here, I think each one of you, though you are staying far away from this place of struggles, the fact that you are empathizing with these struggles, standing up and speaking for these struggles, the fact that you are helping to disseminate these ideas, also take the message of our struggle to the maximum possible. That I think is a very important duty that all of you are doing. And for us in this movement, it gives a lot of strength that you are standing by this struggle in this manner.
Thank you very much, Vijayji. I mean, yeah, I think we are all in solidarity with each other. Surendra, can you give your reflection on and the farm laws and its connections with academic freedom?
I think we need to respond at two levels. I completely agree with the first two speakers who have talked about general solidarities that all of us should have. Anyone who is a kind of quote unquote right thinking individual wherever we are, and if we are Indians, obviously one feels much stronger. But I think there's another level that we need to talk about when we are talking to people like us, because we are party to this game. We have played our own part in bringing situation to this level where Indian farmers are. And that is because, after 1990s, I know about my community of academics in India. For us, village did not exist. We stopped working on agriculture. There are very few of us, people like Shreya and me and a couple of others who still work on agrarian changes. We have played our role in invisibilizing agriculture in the national imagination, in the middle class imagination. Media would occasionally talk about it, but talk about it through stereotypes. For example, we have had the stereotype of agrarian distress and farmer crisis. So the only thing that you talk about is farmer committing suicide. That's not the picture. That's not the real picture. And I think even now, most of us are thinking about farmers' movements through those mainstream stereotypes. Agriculture is very, very complicated subject. There is a lot happening on ground. Shreya has recently done her work on Punjab. Situation of Punjab is very, very different from what is happening in Kerala. Kerala is very different from what is happening in Madhya Pradesh. So there are regional trajectories. There are dynamics of agriculture. Even today in Punjab, the moment you talk to anyone, they would say, yeah, 60% Indians depend on Punjab, depend on agriculture. That is not true for every region. I mean, if you go to Punjab also, not more than 25-30% people directly depend on agriculture, but there's a large number of people who are partially dependent on agriculture or connected to agriculture. So that point that you were making about truth, And I think that is a very, very important point, because we have stopped working on agriculture. We have stopped. So the media produces those lies, and those lies then become, in some sense, the truth of the post-truth times. And I think that's where academics need to recognize their responsibility, and we need to engage with realities of agriculture empirically. And when I say agriculture, I talk about diversities of people who are involved in agriculture. For example, question of agriculture labor. We cannot talk about agriculture labor the way we talk about agrarian proletariat, or the way Lenin Mao talked about it in the early 20th century. The question of agriculture labor, even in terms of livelihood, is very different. You don't have employment available in agriculture for a casual laborer in Punjab. So how would you think about it politically? We don't have any language. And those need to be talked about. I mean, agriculture, they work on agriculture, but they also do 5 other types of odd jobs. There are few people who are regular farm servants. What is their status? What kind of relational structure they have? We did work on it some time back, but these are questions that need to be constantly revisited and studied. And I would say that academics, if they have to be part of this movement, and they have to, solidarity, yes, at emotional level, one can express solidarity, but that's not enough. We need to take rural more seriously. We need to engage with agriculture professionally. We should bring our skills so that we can project realities of farming populations, so that middle class stereotypes can also be questioned. There are lots of people who just get fooled by these establishment economists that this is what agriculture is. On ground, agriculture is very different from the way it is presented by the neoliberal establishment economists, and that narrative continues to be the mainstream narrative, unfortunately. Even when farmers talk about it, talk about in terms of share to national income and stuff like that. Agriculture is very different reality. It's not just an economic activity, it's also culture, it's also a lifestyle, it's also a source of kind of, identifying and thinking about others, thinking about self. And the whole idea of a nation and nation state. I think that's where I would want to pitch this point, and we need to kind of spend some more time on this perhaps, so that we can raise questions where academics can be part.
Yeah, thank you very much, Satinder. I think you have raised very important aspects. Agriculture is not just a business, it's a life itself. It is, and also connected with, as you mentioned, diversity and nature and metabolic relations and all this. I think, there's a bigger picture that we need to understand. Shreya, can you please come in and give your thoughts on that?
Yes, thank you so much, Ashok. So I just want to echo everybody's else's views also on the need to extend solidarity to amplify the voice of the protesters, of course. But I think there is something there is a bigger role that solidarity, particularly at this historical moment, needs to play, which is that you are up against an establishment that is out to delegitimize the movement in many different ways. So extending solidarity in different ways and finding reasons to do this is also a way of actually is actually a way of fighting back against that delegitimization. So I think I just want to say that solidarity, not just because there is a group of people, so as basic as human beings we basically should express support, but it's also to create a conversation which can accord legitimacy to the protest, I think, and to the issues that are at stake. I think the other thing that I see, the thread that I think ties perhaps the academic community and the way the farmers' movements have evolved is also has to do with the question of fundamentally of dissent and the fact that dissent is legitimate, and that we need to continue to do it in whichever way possible. It's something that the academic community has been suffering the brunt of as well, and we can see that kind of repression now being peddled against the farmers' movements as well. I think the fact that the farmers' movements also has articulated its claims so much in the language of being in the language of citizenship and in the language of upholding the constitution. These are these are again things that as academics who are all about truth and freedom of speech, these are things that this kind of affinity to the constitution I think is very important It's something that needs to be developed. I think finally, I suppose what I want to say is also that, just agreeing with Professor Jodhkar, that I think there is a lot to be done by academics in terms of unpacking what the rural and the agrarian is, not just, to highlight the empirical realities, but as, to create the, create a language of politics that speaks to these empirical realities. And that is, of course, the role of social scientists, to do. I mean, that's for us to do that kind of research, to engage with movements and with practitioners, and find that political voice. So I suppose I'll just stop here.
Sure. Thank you very much. So I would like to take the thread that you mentioned, delegitimization of farmers' protest and criminalization of political dissent. So Viju and Shreya, can you reflect on this? And as you know, the state's narrative about the farm laws and protests have been changing over the past 3 months, and they have been labeling, creating new labels, to suppress these movements. And I mean, I just wanted to unpack this narrative and present to us how do you understand this process, and or how farmers are understanding these government tactics? Viju?
I take it. Actually, from the very beginning, any protest that has happened in our country in the last 7 years, from 2014 onwards, immediately it is portrayed as anti-national. Here in this particular struggle, initially they began by calling it a struggle by Khalistanis. Then they tried to, when that narrative did not hold, then it was said that they belong to the Tukde gang, or those who are anti-Indian. It is supported by Pakistan, it is supported by China, or it is by urban Naxals. All these narratives they have tried. For once, the efforts to divide also has failed in this particular case. And this narrative that the government as well as its corporate media has been trying to create, that somehow has not stuck as it has done in earlier struggles. That is something which I think one important reason probably could be that this unity that has been built is also more than 500 organizations, small and big. Some may be just a village or a district-based organization, some having wider spread. We managed to build an issue-based unity which called for the repeal of these 3 acts and the withdrawal of the changes being brought in the Electricity Act, and also around the issue of minimum support price at least 50% more than the cost of production. So this is an issue-based unity that we have been built. Though we may have differences on many other issues, on these issues, we managed to build a rock-solid unity. I think that is why the government narratives we could counter even after the 26th January incidents, the manner in which they tried to whip up a frenzy, get their stormtroopers into the Sangh Parivar goons coming and attacking the different protest sites. We only saw much bigger number of people coming out in support of the farm protests. Also, never before kind of a unity, Hindu-Muslim unity, unity cutting across castes. That also is something which is emerging. Though, yes, maybe one can say much more is desirable on those counts. Still, I think there are positive elements in this struggle which point to a situation wherein the policies of divide and rule are not working like before.
Shreya, can you give your take on that?
Yeah, of course. So as Viju said, I think the government is, they are, again, like I said, they constantly want to delegitimize, and they are finding, new kinds of labels to put. But I think what is really striking to me is that they have to keep repackaging this almost every few weeks, and that actually tells you how it's not working. So it's moved, so many phases. The last one that we saw is, it was kind of Andolan GV, so it went from Khalistani to Andolan GV to, incidentally, I also want to say incidentally to Sanjeev Balyan actually saying, no, farmers are very innocent and it's a, bholi kaum hai ye, this is an innocent community. So also kind of infantilizing them. So they seem to be really at a loss. They're kind of dangling between, making villains out of them and then kind of infantilizing them and saying that, they don't have, they kind of don't know what's going on, and there's a group that is misleading them. And I think that, if anything, it kind of shows the strength of the movement, the fact that the movement has overcome, each of these labels again and again through different kinds of strategies. And I think there is, of course, there is much to critique about the government in that sense, but there's also much to take heart from. So,
if I can just interrupt to translate for Harinder ji. So, Harinder, Professor Jyotka ने पहला गल कीती सी ये चुकी कि academics ਨੂੰ ਵੀ ਆਪਣੀ ਡਿਊਟੀ ਨਿਭਾਣੀ ਚਾਹੀਦੀ ਤੇ ਅਸੀਂ ਵੀ ਕੰਮ ਆਪਣਾ ਨਹੀਂ ਕੀਤਾ। ਮਤਲਬ academics ਨੇ ਵੀ 1990 ਤੋਂ ਜਿੱਦਾਂ ਐਗਰੀਕਲਚਰ ਨੂੰ ਪੜ੍ਹਨਾ ਬੰਦ ਕਰਤਾ। ਤੇ ਜੇ academics ਦਾ ਕੰਮ ਹੁੰਦਾ ਹੈ ਕਿ ਤੁਸੀਂ connections ਲੱਭੋ, ਸੋ ਅਸੀਂ ਉਹ ਕੰਮ ਨਹੀਂ ਕੀਤਾ ਤੇ ਉਹ ਜੀ ਰਿਸਰਚ ਸਾਨੂੰ ਕਰਨੀ ਜ਼ਰੂਰੀ ਹੈ ਤੇ ਤਾਂ ਕਿ ਅਸੀਂ ਫਿਰ ਜਿਹੜੇ ਕਿਸਾਨੀ ਹੈ ਉਹਨੂੰ ਅਸੀਂ ਇਕਨੋਮਿਕਸ ਨਾਲ ਰਿਲੇਟ ਕਰ ਸਕਨੇ ਆ, ਕਲਚਰ ਨਾਲ ਰਿਲੇਟ ਕਰ ਸਕਨੇ ਆ ਤੇ ਜਿਹੜਾ ਵਾਤਾਵਰਨ ਹੈ ਉਹਦੇ ਨਾਲ ਵੀ ਅਸੀਂ এনवायरमेंट ਨਾਲ ਵੀ ਰਿਲੇਟ ਕਰ ਸਕਨੇ ਆ ਤੇ ਉਹ ਕੰਮ ਹਾਲੇ ਐਕੈਡੈਮਿਕਸ ਨੂੰ ਕਰਨਾ ਹੈ ਤੇ ਕਰਨਾ ਚਾਹੀਦਾ ਹੈ ਤੇ ਉਹ ਰਿਸਰਚ ਕਰਨੀ ਚਾਹੀਦੀ ਹੈ। ਫਿਰ ਅਸ਼ੋਕ ਦਾ ਸਵਾਲ ਸੀ ਕਿ ਸਰਕਾਰ हुकूमत है जड़ी ते जड़ा मीडिया है वो नवे लेबल ਲੱਭ के इस मोर्चे नू बदनाम करते ने, उन्होंने साइडलाइन करना चाहते ने ते ओदा की उसका की नतीजा होया है ते ये गल निकली है कि क्योंकि इन्नी एकता है एक इशू दे उत्ते एकता हो चुकी है कि यह जड़ी जाति दे उत्ते धर्म दे उत्ते पहला क्या टुकड़े टुकड़े या अर्बन नक्सल या खालिस्तानी वो सारे लेबल चिपक नहीं पाए।
किसानी जो हरी क्रांति दे नाल जिहड़ा किसानी दे अंदर जने विदेशी कंपनियां दे वल्लों जिवें कारगिल है, मॉन्सेंटो है जां होर उन्हां वल्लों बीज आए, रेहां स्प्रेहां खादां आईयां, किसानां नूं एक हलारा मिलिया जिहदे च उन्हां दी पैदावार वधी ते किसानां ने खेती कीती। ਉਹਦੇ ਨਾਲ ਜਾਨੀ कि किसानां दी जिन्नी वड्डी पੱਧਰ ते लुੱਟ होई, खुदकशियां होईयां, करजे चढ़े, जमीन खुस्सी ते उदों तो ही जिहड़ी आर्थिक मंदवाड़ा है ਉਹ किसानां ते आउणा शुरू होया ते किसानी है जिहड़ी ਉਹ बुरी तरह टुੱਟਣ ਲੱਗੀ। 90-91 ਤੋਂ ਬਾਅਦ किसानां नूं जिहड़ा सरकार ने सबसिडी देनी सी, किसानां नूं सरकार ने कुछ हलारा देना सी, ਉਹ नहीं दिता। सबसिडियां उन्हां दियां खत्म होण लग गईयां ते नाल ही किसानी अंदोलन थोड़ा किसान इकट्ठे हुंदे गए, आपदियां मंगां ते ਉਹ लड़ना शुरू किया। उन्होंने अपनी ताकत इकट्ठी की। हुकूमत दे वल्लों चाहे पंजाब सरकार है चाहे सेंटर दे वल्लों किसानां नूं बिल्कुल भी जानी कि इग्नोर किया गया। उन्हां नूं ही इस कासे दा जिम्मेवार ठहराया गया कि वातावरण नूं प्रदूषण करन वाले, खराब करन वाले किसान ने, ये पराली नूं अग लाउंदे ने, उहदे करके वातावरण खराब हुंदा हैगा। ते जद के जो पंजाब दे विच जां हिंदुस्तान दे विच फैक्ट्रियां लगियां ने, कारखाने लगे ने, जिहड़े कारपोरेट घराने है उन्हां नूं खुल्लां दित्तियां गईयां, उन्हां ने प्रदूषण भी फैलाया, पानी भी जहरीला किया, कैंसर वर्गियां होर बहुत सारियां बीमारियां जिहड़ियां लोकां नूं लगियां, जमीन भी खराब हुई, पैदावार भी घटी, जिहदे विचों जानी कि किसान अपनियां छोटियां मंगां ते स्ट्रगल कीती, इकट्ठे होके उन्होंने वड्डियां मंगां दे खिलाफ, वड्डियां सरकार दियां वड्डियां नीतियां दे खिलाफ लड़ाई शुरू की। जिहड़ियां नीतियां कारपोरेट पक्षी ने, साम्राज पक्षी ने, साम्राजी मुल्कां दे विचों बनदियां ने, जिवें WTO है, संसार व्यापार संस्था, मंत्री मुद्रा कोष है, ਜਿਹੜੇ ਉਹ ਕਹਿੰਦੇ ਨੇ कि तुसीं ਭਾਰਤ ਦੇ ਕਿਸਾਨਾਂ ਨੂੰ ਜਿਹੜੀ ਕੋਈ ਸਬਸਿਡੀ ਹੈ ਉਹ ਨਹੀਂ ਦੇਣੀ, ਇੱਥੋਂ ਦੀ ਪੰਜਾਬ ਦੀ ਭਾਰਤ ਦੀ ਕਣਕ ਨਹੀਂ ਖਰੀਦਣੀ, ਕਾਟਨ ਨਹੀਂ ਖਰੀਦਣੀ, ਝੋਨਾ ਨਹੀਂ ਖਰੀਦਣਾ, ਕਿ ਜੋ ਸਾਡੇ ਮੁਲਕਾਂ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਨੂੰ ਖਰੀਦਣਾ ਹੈਗਾ। ਇਹਦੇ ਕਰਕੇ ਜਾਨੀ ਕਿ ਪੰਜਾਬ ਦੇ ਕਿਸਾਨਾਂ ਨੇ ਲੜਾਈ ਸ਼ੁਰੂ ਕੀਤੀ। ਲੜਾਈ ਸ਼ੁਰੂ ਕਰਦੇ ਹੋਏ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਨੇ ਸਾਰੇ ਧਰਮਾਂ ਤੋਂ ਉੱਪਰ ਉੱਠ ਕੇ, ਜਾਤਾਂ ਤੋਂ ਉੱਪਰ ਉੱਠ ਕੇ ਕਿਹਾ ਕਿ ਜੇ ਅਸੀਂ ਜਥੇਬੰਦ ਹੋਣਾ ਤਾਂ ਧਰਮ ਨਿਰਲੇਪ, ਸਾਰੇ ਧਰਮਾਂ ਦਾ ਸਨਮਾਨ ਕਰਕੇ, ਜਿਹਦੇ ਕਰਕੇ ਕਿ ਅੱਜ ਜਿਹੜਾ ਕਿਸਾਨ ਅੰਦੋਲਨ ਐਡੀ ਵੱਡੀ ਪੱਧਰ ਤੇ ਫੈਲਿਆ ਹੋਇਆ ਹੈ, ਜਿਹਨੂੰ ਕੁੱਲ ਦੁਨੀਆ ਦੀ ਸਪੋਰਟ ਹੈ, ਕੁੱਲ ਲੋਕਾਂ ਦੀ ਸਪੋਰਟ ਹੈ, ਬੁੱਧੀਜੀਵੀ, ਪੱਤਰਕਾਰ, ਹਰ ਵਰਗ, ਦੇਸੀ ਵਿਦੇਸੀ ਲੋਕ ਇਹਦੇ ਨਾਲ ਜੁੜੇ ਹੋਏ ਹੈ। ਇਹ ਇਸੇ ਕਰਕੇ ਹੀ ਹੈ ਕਿ ਇਹ ਕਿਸਾਨੀ ਕਿੱਤੇ ਨਾਲ ਜੁੜਿਆ ਹੋਇਆ ਹੈ, ਕਿਸਾਨੀ ਦੀਆਂ ਜ਼ਿੰਦਗੀ ਦਾ ਮਸਲਾ ਹੈ ਕਿ ਜੇ ਅੱਜ ਕਿਸਾਨਾਂ ਕੋਲੇ ਜ਼ਮੀਨ ਨਹੀਂ ਰਹਿੰਦੀ, ਰੁਜ਼ਗਾਰ ਨਹੀਂ ਰਹਿੰਦਾ, ਵਾਤਾਵਰਨ ਜਿਹੜਾ ਦੂਸ਼ਿਤ ਹੋ ਰਿਹਾ ਹੈ, ਜਿਹਦੇ ਤੋਂ ਬਿਮਾਰੀਆਂ ਲੱਗ ਰਹੀਆਂ ਨੇ, ਲੋਕ ਮਰ ਰਹੇ ਨੇ, ਕਿ ਜੇ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਕੋਲੇ ਕੁਝ ਵੀ ਨਹੀਂ ਰਹਿੰਦਾ ਤਾਂ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਦਾ ਵਜੂਦ ਖਤਮ ਹੁੰਦਾ ਹੈ। ਇਸ ਕਰਕੇ ਉਹ ਧਰਮਾਂ ਤੋਂ ਉੱਪਰ ਉੱਠ ਕੇ, ਜਾਤਾਂ ਤੋਂ ਉੱਪਰ ਉੱਠ ਕੇ, ਫਿਰਕਿਆਂ ਤੋਂ ਉੱਪਰ ਉੱਠ ਕੇ ਇਕਜੁੱਟਤਾ ਦੇ ਨਾਲ ਇਹ ਲੜਾਈ ਜਿਹੜੀ ਲੜ ਰਹੀ ਹੈ, ਜਿਹਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਜਾਨੀ ਕਿ ਭਾਰਤ ਦੀ ਹਕੂਮਤ ਦੇ ਵੱਲੋਂ ਅੰਦੋਲਨਕਾਰੀਆਂ ਤੇ ਬੜੇ ਬੜੇ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਨੇ ਫਤਵੇ ਲਾਏ ਕਿ ਇਹ ਟੁਕੜਾ ਟੁਕੜਾ ਗੈਂਗ ਹੈ, ਇਹ ਖਾਲਿਸਤਾਨੀ ਨੇ, ਇਹ ਮਾਓਵਾਦੀ ਨੇ, ਇਹ ਚੀਨ ਦੇ ਏਜੰਟ ਨੇ, ਇਹਨਾਂ ਨੂੰ ਪਾਕਿਸਤਾਨ ਦੀ ਸਪੋਰਟ ਹੈ। ਪਰ ਉਹ ਇਹ ਕੰਮ ਕਰਨ 'ਚ ਕਾਮਯਾਬ ਨਹੀਂ ਹੋਈ, ਉਹ ਫਿਰਕਾ ਪ੍ਰਸਤੀ ਨਹੀਂ ਫੈਲਾ ਸਕੀ, ਸਗੋਂ ਲੋਕਾਂ ਨੇ ਆਪਣੀ ਇਸ ਸਟਰਗਲ ਦੇ ਰਾਹੀਂ, ਇਸ ਅੰਦੋਲਨ ਦੇ ਰਾਹੀਂ ਕਾਰਪੋਰੇਟ ਘਰਾਣਿਆਂ ਨੂੰ ਨਿਸ਼ਾਨੇ ਤੇ ਲਿਆਂਦਾ ਹੈ ਕਿ ਜਿਹੜੇ ਇੱਥੋਂ ਦੇ ਅਡਾਨੀ ਅਬਾਨੀ ਹੈ ਜਾਂ ਹੋਰ ਹੈ, ਉਹ ਕੁੱਲ ਭਾਰਤ ਦੇ ਜਿਹੜੇ ਕਾਰੋਬਾਰ ਹੈ, ਚਾਹੇ ਉਹ ਮੰਡੀਕਰਨ ਹੈ ਜਿਹਨੂੰ ਅਡਾਨੀ ਆਪਣੇ ਕਬਜ਼ੇ 'ਚ ਕਰ ਰਿਹਾ ਹੈਗਾ, ਜਾਂ ਪਰਚੂਨ ਦਾ ਖੇਤਰ ਹੈ ਜਿਹਦੇ ਤੇ ਅਬਾਨੀ ਦਾ ਕਬਜ਼ਾ ਹੋ ਰਿਹਾ, ਉਹਨਾਂ ਨੂੰ ਦਿਖਾਉਣ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਕਾਮਯਾਬ ਹੋਏ ਹੈ। ਇਸ ਕਰਕੇ ਜਾਨੀ ਕਿ ਹਕੂਮਤ ਨੇ ਜਿਹੜਾ ਇਹ ਹਮਲਾ ਕੀਤਾ ਸੀ ਕਿ ਇਹ ਖਾਲਿਸਤਾਨੀ ਟੁਕੜੇ ਟੁਕੜੇ ਗੈਂਗ ਹੈ, ਉਹ ਇਸ ਅੰਦੋਲਨ ਤੇ ਨਹੀਂ ਲੱਗ ਸਕਿਆ। ਅੰਦੋਲਨਕਾਰੀਆਂ ਨੇ ਇਸ ਗੱਲ ਨੂੰ ਪਾਸੇ ਕੀਤਾ ਤੇ ਇਹਨੂੰ ਕਿਸਾਨਾਂ ਦਾ, ਲੋਕਾਂ ਦਾ, ਪੂਰੇ ਭਾਰਤ ਦੇ ਲੋਕਾਂ ਦਾ, ਕੁੱਲ ਦੁਨੀਆ ਦਾ ਘੋਲ ਹੈ ਜਿਹੜਾ ਉਹ ਬਣਾਇਆ ਹੈਗਾ।
So this would actually speak to us as well, the WTO and the IMF, those of us who are sitting in the US, and, you can also see the agrarian crisis here, like completely taken over by agribusiness. So Harinder is saying that after the Green Revolution, the agrarian crisis in India deepened, and with the reforms, the neoliberal reforms or the restructuring in 1991, the corporates were given a free hand. There's pressure from the international organizations like the WTO and the IMF to cut subsidies to farmers. And the market was opened for fertilizer and seeds and so on from like Monsanto and Cargill, to the situation now where the two main corporate houses, that's Ambani and Adani, seem to have prepared in advance of these reforms or bills to actually build storage facilities to be able to store crops, as one of the reform bills actually, or reforms, they're not bills anymore, eliminates the restriction on essential commodities being stored by corporates. So I'm not doing a great job here of translating the actual sort of the power with which Harinder spoke, but I'm just giving you a gist of what she has said.
So Surinder, at least from distance, what we see happening on the ground looks so beautiful and incredible. There is the emergence of new communities transcending various identities and political variations that Shreya and Viju also mentioned. We really wonder, what is the driving force? I should rather say, what is the internal driving force for the emergence of these new communities, cultivating new forms of love, resistance, solidarity, and resilience? And how does it possible? I see the new imagination has come true in one way or the other, or in different forms. So can you explain to us, how people transcended their different orientations, political orientation, identities, since you have been working on the caste issues and other identity issues? Can you help us understand what is the driving force here? You're on mute, Surinder. Thank you.
I think it's still a kind of something that they are working on. It's not as rosy as it appears from far or distance, or they are able to present it in a sense quite effectively. There are difficulties and there are also differences which need to be recognized and which need to be at some level engaged with. I think for the first time in my understanding, the way, for example, in Northwest India, land is mostly owned and controlled and cultivated by dominant caste groups. And they are mostly Jats and Jats, Jat Sikhs and Jats. And there are other allied communities who are also agriculturists. In, for example, Haryana, you have Gujars, you have Rhodes, you have Sainis, you have several other communities. And Dalits, for example, the ex-untouchables, the scheduled castes in Punjab, Haryana have all been landless. Nearly 96% of Dalits have historically been landless in Punjab. And their concerns are very different. Their relationship to land is very different. But yes, I think one way that I think when movement started, they were very, what one should say, smart to use the language of Sikhi. That's how the movement started from Punjab, and they were working on it for several months. It wasn't something that came up immediately and suddenly. And I think the role that has been played by Punjabi singers needs to be recognized. The various other cultural activists who went around and who had been going around for the past 6 months to mobilize particularly the young people of Punjab. And there's a lot of unemployment, youth unemployment in Punjab, but the social base was largely among the dominant Jat castes, and we should recognize that. But I think the language of Sikhi helped them unite internally across communities in Punjab. And it also, perhaps, this is again something that academics should recognize. Every time we have to talk about society, we rush to, Enlightenment, rationality, and we rush to social sciences as developed in France and Germany and England and US now. We have our own categories. And I think farmers have shown us that there is language of protest which is available locally. And this language of protest is not simply language of protest, it is also language of inclusivity. For example, when they began to talk about Chardi Kala and Sarbadda Pala, now Chardi Kala is a very interesting kind of Punjabi idiom, comes from Nanak and Sikhi, which basically talks about we should always look up, don't give up, right? And this is something which is, and it goes along with Sarbadda Pala, that means, good for all, and which includes like everyone. So at some level, they were able to, at some level, remobilize a language of Sikhi, which has been there, which is practiced even in everyday life. But at the same time, it was caste difference, class difference, which had become foregrounded. And I think that language of inclusion helped them. And when they came to Haryana, again, they invoked a very patriarchal narrative that we are big brothers and you are our younger brothers, because Haryana has been part of Punjab, and it worked. And it worked because Haryanavi farmers were also feeling the same thing, but they had not mobilized themselves. In Punjab, there were already 5-6 months of protests that were going on. And I think Punjab farmers have historically been much better organized, but they are not really very well organized, because you know that there are like 30+ unions in Punjab itself, right? So there are different unions with different kind of political platforms that Viju was talking about earlier. So they realize that these are common issues where we must come together. So I think there was some kind of political socialization and coordination that went on, which built up this kind of, and they realized that we are going to use our own language. We are going to speak in Punjabi. We are going to use idiom of Sikhi. And I think it was very well worked out, because that also gave them a different kind of energy and sense of unity in a language which was very local and native language. It was not language of the left or language of the West or the language of the educated. it was the language of people which was used all the time in everyday, but it was also language of inclusion. It was also language of politics. It was also language of protest. And I think that is how it started. And that kind of spirit has continued. I think that's something which really surprises me. 3 months have gone, and every time anybody goes and talks to any farm leaders, he or she doesn't show any kind of fatigue. Even today, Harinder ji is saying there's no sign of fatigue that you notice that, yeah, maybe we should have done this, maybe we should have done that. No regret that we are doing. Yes, there have been problems, but we will not give up and we will move to the next stage. And that's what they have done. And I think they've also been very, in some sense, again, a culture of agriculture has brought them together. So these are farmers' movements, and these are primarily movements of agriculture, land owning dominant castes. As a sociologist, I would admit that, and they have been trying to include agricultural labor. Their participation has been peripheral. They have been trying to include Dalits, which is very good. Today, for example, they are celebrating Ravidas Jayanti. This is how you, during the process of social movements, societies transform. And this is, I think, this would be another bigger contribution of the movement, even if they don't kind of, that one should not say they won't succeed. But I'm saying that along with that, these new solidarities, they're recognizing that these are not Dalits, these are fellow citizens. And there's a new language of citizenship, there's a new language of, solidarity, which it somehow is also making them realize. This one leader was telling yesterday that all the Jats and farmers should have photo of Baba Saheb Ambedkar in their house, and all the Dalits should have photographs of Chotu Ram in their house. These are wonderful initiatives which are local to Northwest India. They would not resonate perhaps in other parts of India. Chotu Ram is not something that farmers and laborers of Kerala would recognize. But yes, in Punjab, Haryana, that would make a lot of difference. So there is a kind of mutual respect that we are now equal. And this itself is revolutionary. I mean, Jats used to be very kind of, feudal is a wrong word, but very, very kind of casteist. And they've realized that if we want to fight for our own battles as citizens, then we will need to produce citizenship solidarities rather than caste solidarities. And I think even though they start with that base, I think in movement, they are learning quite a lot, and they're also trying to translate it into everyday social life, which would be a great achievement of the movement by itself.
Thank you very much, Surinder. That's really inspiring to know. So Harinderji, can you also respond to the same question of, how people of different caste and different political orientations come together to form this bigger movement?
So Harinder, ਹੁਣੇ Professor Jyotika ਨੇ ਕਿਹਾ ਕਿ ਜਿਹੜਾ ਇਹ ਅੰਦੋਲਨ ਹੈ, ਜਿਹੜਾ ਤੁਸੀਂ ਜਿਹੜਾ ਸੰਘਰਸ਼ ਕਰ ਰਹੇ ਹੋ, ਉਹਦੀ ਆਪਣੀ ਇੱਕ ਜ਼ੁਬਾਨ ਹੈ, ਜਿਹੜੀ ਖੇਤੀ ਤੋਂ, ਕਿਸਾਨੀ ਤੋਂ ਤੇ ਉਸ ਕਲਚਰ ਤੋਂ ਨਿਕਲੀ ਹੈ ਤੇ ਬਾਹਰ ਆਈ ਹੈ। ਤੇ ਤੁਸੀਂ ਇਸ ਦੇ ਬਾਰੇ ਹੋਰ ਸਾਨੂੰ ਦੱਸ ਸਕਦੇ ਹੋ ਕਿ ਇਹ ਜਿਹੜਾ ਅੰਦੋਲਨ ਹੈ ਉਹ ਇੱਕ ਤਰ੍ਹਾਂ ਦਾ ਸਕੂਲ ਵੀ ਹੈ, ਜਿਹਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਇੱਕ ਤੁਸੀਂ ਨਵਾਂ ਸਮਾਜ ਤਿਆਰ ਕਰ ਰਹੇ ਹੋ, ਤੇ ਜੇ ਤੁਸੀਂ ਉਸ ਬਾਰੇ ਸਾਨੂੰ ਥੋੜਾ ਦੱਸੋ।
ਹਾਂਜੀ, ਜਿਹੜਾ ਇਹ ਅੰਦੋਲਨ ਚੱਲ ਰਿਹਾ ਹੈਗਾ ਕਿ ਪਹਿਲਾਂ ਜਦੋਂ ਆਪਣੀਆਂ ਸਟੇਟਾਂ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਕਿਸਾਨ ਅੰਦੋਲਨ ਕਰ ਰਹੇ ਸੀਗੇ, ਪੰਜਾਬ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਖਾਸ ਕਰਕੇ ਕਿਸਾਨ ਅੰਦੋਲਨ ਕਰ ਰਹੇ ਸੀ, ਉਦੋਂ ਅਸੀਂ ਆਪਣੇ ਪੰਜਾਬ ਤੱਕ ਸੀਮਿਤ ਸੀਗੇ। ਕਿਸਾਨ, ਨੌਜਵਾਨ, ਔਰਤਾਂ, ਮਜ਼ਦੂਰ ਇਸ ਅੰਦੋਲਨ ਦਾ ਹਿੱਸਾ ਬਣਦੇ ਸੀ। ਮੁਲਾਜ਼ਮ ਵੀ ਅਸੀਂ ਅੰਦੋਲਨ ਦੇ ਨਾਲ ਜੁੜਦੇ ਸੀ। ਕਿਸਾਨ ਮੁਲਾਜ਼ਮਾਂ ਦੀ ਸਪੋਰਟ ਤੇ ਜਾਂਦੇ ਸੀ, ਮਜ਼ਦੂਰਾਂ ਦੀ ਸਪੋਰਟ ਤੇ ਜਾਂਦੇ ਸੀਗੇ। ਪਰ ਜੋ ਇਹ ਅੰਦੋਲਨ ਚੱਲਿਆ ਹੈਗਾ, ਜਿਹਨੂੰ ਅੱਜ 9 ਮਹੀਨਿਆਂ ਦੇ ਲਗਭਗ ਹੋ ਗਏ ਨੇ, 3 ਮਹੀਨੇ ਦਿੱਲੀ ਦੇ ਬਾਰਡਰਾਂ ਤੇ ਬੈਠੇ ਹੋਏ ਕਿਸਾਨਾਂ ਨੂੰ ਹੋ ਗਏ ਨੇ। ਜਦੋਂ ਅਸੀਂ ਪੰਜਾਬ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚੋਂ ਇਹ ਅੰਦੋਲਨ ਸ਼ੁਰੂ ਕੀਤਾ ਤੇ ਪੰਜਾਬ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਲੜਦੇ ਪਿੰਡਾਂ ਤੇ ਸ਼ਹਿਰਾਂ ਵਾਲਿਆਂ ਦੀ ਜੋਟੀ ਪਾਉਂਦੇ ਹੋਏ, ਮਜ਼ਦੂਰਾਂ ਕਿਸਾਨਾਂ ਦੀ ਜੋਟੀ ਪਾਉਂਦੇ ਹੋਏ, ਤੇ ਵੱਡੀ ਗਿਣਤੀ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਜਿਹੜੇ ਨੌਜਵਾਨ ਹੈ ਉਹ ਇਹਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਸ਼ਾਮਲ ਹੋਏ। ਤੇ ਜਦੋਂ ਅਸੀਂ ਦਿੱਲੀ ਨੂੰ ਸੱਦਾ ਦਿੱਤਾ ਹੈਗਾ ਕਿ 26-27 ਨਵੰਬਰ ਨੂੰ ਦਿੱਲੀ ਨੂੰ ਚੱਲਣਾ ਹੈਗਾ, ਜਦੋਂ ਅਸੀਂ ਦਿੱਲੀ ਆਏ ਹਾਂ, ਸਾਨੂੰ ਵੀ ਨਹੀਂ ਸੀ ਪਤਾ ਕਿ ਸਾਨੂੰ ਐਡੀ ਵੱਡੀ ਪੱਧਰ ਤੇ ਹਰਿਆਣੇ ਦੇ ਕਿਸਾਨਾਂ ਦੀ, ਉੱਥੋਂ ਦੇ ਲੋਕਾਂ ਦੀ ਸਪੋਰਟ ਮਿਲੂਗੀ। ਜਿਵੇਂ ਅਸੀਂ 27 ਤਰੀਕ ਨੂੰ ਦਿੱਲੀ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਐਂਟਰ ਹੋਏ ਆ, ਬਹਾਦਰਗੜ੍ਹ ਪਹੁੰਚੇ ਹੈਗੇ ਆ, ਉਹਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਜਿਵੇਂ ਹਰਿਆਣਾ ਆਇਆ ਹੈਗਾ, ਜਿਵੇਂ ਹਰਿਆਣੇ ਨੇ ਕਿਹਾ ਕਿ ਪੰਜਾਬ ਵੱਡਾ ਭਾਈ ਤੇ ਹਰਿਆਣਾ ਛੋਟਾ ਭਾਈ, ਤੇ ਜਦੋਂ ਪੰਜਾਬ ਵੱਡਾ ਭਾਈ ਹਰਿਆਣੇ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਆਇਆ, ਛੋਟੇ ਭਾਈ ਕੋਲੇ ਆਇਆ, ਤੇ ਛੋਟਾ ਭਾਈ ਕਦੇ ਵੀ ਵੱਡੇ ਭਰਾ ਨੂੰ ਜਾਨੀ ਕਿ ਨਿਰਾਸ਼ ਨਹੀਂ ਕਰੂਗਾ। ਤੇ ਭਰਾ ਦੇ ਲਈ ਬਹੁਤ ਵੱਡੀ ਪੱਧਰ ਤੇ ਜਿੰਨੀ ਵੀ ਕੁਰਬਾਨੀ ਦੇਣੀ ਪਈ ਦਿੱਤੀ ਜਾਊਗੀ। ਉਹਨਾਂ ਨੇ ਸਾਨੂੰ ਇਸ ਅੰਦੋਲਨ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਪਤਾ ਲੱਗਿਆ ਕਿ ਜਿੱਥੇ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਨੇ ਖਾਦ ਖੁਰਾਕ ਦਾ ਪ੍ਰਬੰਧ ਕੀਤਾ, ਔਰਤਾਂ ਵੱਡੀ ਗਿਣਤੀ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਸੀ, ਉਹਨਾਂ ਵਾਸਤੇ ਟਾਇਲਟ, ਬਾਥਰੂਮ, ਘਰਾਂ 'ਚ ਰਹਿਣ ਸਹਿਣ ਦਾ ਪ੍ਰਬੰਧ ਕੀਤਾ, ਕੱਪੜਾ ਲੀੜਾ ਧੋਣ ਦਾ ਪ੍ਰਬੰਧ ਕੀਤਾ। ਤੇ ਜੋ ਸਾਡੀ ਹਰਿਆਣਾ ਤੇ ਪੰਜਾਬ ਦੀ ਇੱਕ ਸਾਂਝ ਪਹਿਲਾਂ ਟੁੱਟੀ ਹੋਈ ਸੀਗੀ, ਕਦੇ ਪਾਣੀਆਂ ਦੇ ਮਸਲੇ ਤੇ, ਕਦੇ ਜਾਟ ਦੇ ਮਸਲੇ ਤੇ, ਪਰ ਉਹ ਇਸ ਅੰਦੋਲਨ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਜਿਹੜੀ ਸਾਡੀ ਸਾਂਝ ਹੈ ਉਹ ਮਜ਼ਬੂਤ ਹੋਈ ਹੈ। ਪਾਣੀਆਂ ਦਾ ਮਸਲਾ 2 ਨੰਬਰ ਤੇ ਗਿਆ। ਇੱਥੇ ਸਿੱਖ ਧਰਮ ਦੇ ਲੋਕ ਵੀ ਬੈਠੇ ਨੇ, ਇੱਥੇ ਜਿਹੜੇ ਰਾਮ ਰਾਮ ਕਰਨ ਵਾਲੇ ਹਿੰਦੂ ਨੇ ਉਹ ਵੀ ਸਿੱਖਾਂ ਦੇ ਨਾਲ ਬੈਠੇ ਨੇ, ਉਹ ਹੁੱਕਾ ਪੀ ਰਹੇ ਨੇ। ਔਰਤਾਂ ਦੇ ਨਾਲ ਹਰਿਆਣੇ ਦੀਆਂ ਔਰਤਾਂ ਦੀ ਬੜੀ ਸਾਂਝ ਪਈ ਹੈ। ਨੌਜਵਾਨ ਪੰਜਾਬ ਤੇ ਹਰਿਆਣੇ ਦੇ ਰਲ ਕੇ ਕੰਮ ਕਰ ਰਹੇ ਨੇ, ਸਫਾਈ ਕਰ ਰਹੇ ਨੇ। ਹਰਿਆਣੇ ਦੀਆਂ ਜਿਹੜੀਆਂ ਨੌਜਵਾਨ ਕੁੜੀਆਂ ਸੈਰ ਕਰਦੀਆਂ ਨੇ, ਸਾਈਕਲਿੰਗ ਕਰਦੀਆਂ ਨੇ, ਉਹ ਉੱਥੇ ਆਪਣੇ ਕਿਸਾਨ ਭਰਾਵਾਂ ਤੋਂ ਇਸ ਗੱਲ ਦਾ ਆਸਰਾ ਲੈਂਦੀਆਂ ਕਿ ਸਾਡੇ ਪੰਜਾਬ ਦੇ ਸਾਡੇ ਕਿਸਾਨ ਆਏ ਨੇ, ਸਾਡੇ ਭਰਾ ਆਏ ਨੇ, ਕਿ ਬਹੁਤ ਸਾਰਾ ਜਾਨੀ ਕਿ ਜਿਹੜਾ ਇੱਕ ਸਮਾਜ ਚੰਗੀ ਦਿਸ਼ਾ ਵੱਲ, ਜਿੱਥੇ ਇੱਕ ਦੂਸਰੇ ਦਾ ਖਿਆਲ ਰੱਖਿਆ ਜਾ ਰਿਹਾ ਹੈ, ਔਰਤਾਂ ਨੂੰ ਸਤਿਕਾਰ ਦਿੱਤਾ ਜਾ ਰਿਹਾ ਹੈ, ਮਾਣ ਸਨਮਾਨ ਦੀ ਗੱਲ ਹੁੰਦੀ ਹੈ, ਉਹਨਾਂ ਦੀ ਬਰਾਬਰੀ ਦੀ ਗੱਲ ਹੁੰਦੀ ਹੈ। ਨੌਜਵਾਨ ਵੱਡੀ ਗਿਣਤੀ 'ਚ ਆਏ ਨੇ, ਨਸ਼ਿਆਂ ਤੋਂ ਪਾਸਾ ਵੱਟ ਰਹੇ ਨੇ। ਭਗਤ ਸਿੰਘ ਨੂੰ ਪੜ੍ਹਿਆ ਜਾ ਰਿਹਾ ਹੈ, ਗਦਰੀ ਬਾਬਿਆਂ ਨੂੰ ਪੜ੍ਹਿਆ ਜਾ ਰਿਹਾ ਹੈ, ਬਾਬੇ ਨਾਨਕ ਨੂੰ ਪੜ੍ਹਿਆ ਜਾ ਰਿਹਾ ਹੈ। ਸਾਡੇ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਗੁਰੂਆਂ ਦੀਆਂ ਜਿਹੜੀਆਂ ਸਾਨੂੰ ਦੱਸੀਆਂ ਹੋਈਆਂ ਸਿੱਖਿਆ ਦਿੱਤੀ ਹੋਈ ਉਹਨੂੰ ਮੁੜ ਉਹਨੂੰ ਪੜ੍ਹਿਆ ਜਾ ਰਿਹਾ ਕਿ ਬਹੁਤ ਵਧੀਆ ਜਿਹੜਾ ਕਲਚਰ ਹੈ ਉਹ ਡਿਵੈਲਪ ਹੋ ਰਿਹਾ। ਬਹੁਤ ਵਧੀਆ ਲੋਕ ਇੱਕ ਦੂਜੇ ਨਾਲ ਜੁੜ ਰਹੇ ਹੈ, ਹਕੂਮਤ ਦੀਆਂ ਚਾਲਾਂ ਨੂੰ ਸਮਝ ਰਹੇ ਹੈ। ਲੋਕਾਂ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਇੱਕ ਦੂਸਰੀ ਸਟੇਟ ਦੇ ਪ੍ਰਤੀ ਹਮਦਰਦੀ, ਪਿਆਰ, ਮੋਹ ਮੁਹੱਬਤ ਹੈ ਜਿਹੜਾ ਉਹ ਵੱਧ ਰਿਹਾ ਹੈ। ਤੇ ਸਰਕਾਰ ਜਿਹੜਾ ਕਦੇ ਦੰਗੇ ਕਰਾ ਕੇ, ਕਦੇ ਜਾ
म्यूट हो गया बाय मिस्टेक। हरिंदर जी ठीक है। ਹਾਂਜੀ, ਤੁਸੀਂ ਆਪਣੀ ਗੱਲ ਖਤਮ ਕਰ ਰਹੇ ਸੀ ਕਿ ਜਿਹੜੀ ਹਕੂਮਤ ਹੈ ਉਹ ਦੰਗੇ ਕਰਾਂਦੀ ਸੀ, ਆਪਸ ਚ ਲੜਾਂਦੀ ਸੀ।
ਹਾਂਜੀ, ਇਸ ਅੰਦੋਲਨ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਹਕੂਮਤ ਕਾਮਯਾਬ ਨਹੀਂ ਹੋਈ। ਹਕੂਮਤ ਦੀ ਚਾਲ ਨੂੰ ਲੋਕਾਂ ਨੇ ਸਮਝਿਆ, ਉਹਨੂੰ ਧਰਮ ਦਾ ਮੁੱਦਾ ਨਹੀਂ ਬਣ ਦਿੱਤਾ। ਜਿਵੇਂ 26 ਫਰਵਰੀ ਨੂੰ ਬੀਜੇਪੀ ਹਕੂਮਤ ਦੇ ਵੱਲੋਂ 26 ਜਨਵਰੀ ਨੂੰ ਜਿਵੇਂ ਲਾਲ ਕਿਲੇ ਤੇ ਝੰਡਾ ਚੜਾਉਣ ਦਾ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਨੇ ਇੱਕ ਇਸ਼ੂ ਬਣਾਇਆ, ਆਪਣੇ ਤੰਤਰ ਉਹਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਵਾੜੇ ਕਿ ਇਸ ਅੰਦੋਲਨ ਨੂੰ ਇੱਕ ਸਿੱਖ ਧਰਮ ਦੇ ਨਾਲ ਜੋੜ ਕੇ, ਖਾਲਿਸਤਾਨ ਦੇ ਨਾਲ ਜੋੜ ਕੇ ਕਿਸਾਨਾਂ ਨੂੰ ਕੁੱਟਿਆ ਜਾਊਗਾ, ਜੂਏ ਪੀਏ ਲਾ ਕੇ ਪਰਚੇ ਦਰਜ ਕੀਤੇ ਜਾਣਗੇ, ਇਹਨਾਂ ਨੂੰ ਜੇਲ੍ਹ 'ਚ ਸਿੱਟਿਆ ਜਾਊਗਾ। ਜਦ ਕਿ ਇਸ ਮਸਲੇ ਤੇ ਸਾਰੇ ਹੀ ਕਿਸਾਨਾਂ ਨੇ, ਚਾਹੇ ਉਹ ਯੂਪੀ ਦੇ ਆ, ਹਰਿਆਣੇ ਦੇ ਆ, ਰਾਜਸਥਾਨ ਦੇ ਆ, ਪੰਜਾਬ ਦੇ ਆ, ਉਹਨਾਂ ਨੇ ਇਸ ਗੱਲ ਨੂੰ ਬੁੱਝਿਆ ਤੇ ਇਸ ਗੱਲ ਨੂੰ ਧਾਰਮਿਕ ਇਸ਼ੂ ਨਹੀਂ ਬਣ ਦਿੱਤਾ। ਇਹਨੂੰ ਮੁੜ ਕਿਸਾਨੀ ਦਾ ਇਸ਼ੂ ਬਣਾਇਆ ਹੈਗਾ ਤੇ ਜਾਤਾਂ ਤੋਂ ਉੱਪਰ ਉੱਠ ਕੇ ਕਿੱਤੇ ਨਾਲ ਜੋੜ ਕੇ ਇਹਨੂੰ ਜਾਨੀ ਕਿ ਇਸ ਗੱਲ ਤੇ ਲੈ ਕੇ ਆਂਦਾ ਹੈਗਾ, ਜਿਹਦੇ 'ਚ ਬੀਜੇਪੀ ਸਰਕਾਰ ਕਾਮਯਾਬ ਨਹੀਂ ਹੋਈ। ਲੋਕਾਂ ਨੇ ਮੁੜ ਇਸ ਅੰਦੋਲਨ ਨੂੰ ਹੋਰ ਵੱਡੇ ਰੂਪ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਚਿਤਵਿਆ ਹੈਗਾ, ਹੋਰ ਵੱਡਾ ਬਣਾਇਆ ਹੈਗਾ। ਪਿੰਡਾਂ ਚੋਂ, ਹਰਿਆਣੇ ਚੋਂ, ਰਾਜਸਥਾਨ ਚੋਂ, ਯੂਪੀ ਚੋਂ ਲੋਕ ਆ ਰਹੇ ਨੇ, ਔਰਤਾਂ ਆ ਰਹੀਆਂ, ਨੌਜਵਾਨ ਆ ਰਹੇ ਹੈ ਤੇ ਇਹ ਜਿਹੜਾ ਇਕੱਠ ਦਾ ਜੋਸ਼ ਹੈ ਉਹ ਵੱਧ ਰਿਹਾ ਹੈ।
When we arrived in Delhi on 26, 27 November, we had no idea how we would make it. But Haryana, people of Haryana treated Punjab as the big brother, as an older brother, and did the duty of a younger brother, which is that no costs are spared to take care of the older brother. And we had a lot of women with us, and they opened their homes to us so that women could use bathrooms, take baths, etc. Since then, people from many other states have joined us, and it's a different kind of world we are creating, where there is dignity, there is respect, there is love, there is the desire that she spoke about this concept of like manukta or humanity, where human is not the enemy of another human. And she says that they followed the ideas of Baba Nanak, Bhagat Singh, and the Gadri Babas. That history, which they have also kept alive, has been part of this this new place. Young people have moved away from drugs and alcohol, but are really, you see them cleaning and managing these new settlements or camps. And women are, it's a place of safety and security, and women take part in debate and discussions. There are young women from Haryana fighting with their brothers from Punjab. So yeah, more or less, that's what Harinder.
Sure. Thank you, Harinderji. So you also been part of these struggles for a long time, and have been actively participating in at various borders. I mean, it's very interesting to talk about borders within India. Can you also reflect on the new communities?
Ashok, like Professor Jyotka mentioned, this is not a spontaneously, something that has emerged spontaneously. There has gone a lot of meticulous activity, planning and all that has gone into it. And while now what drives them, this unity, probably is that if you don't stand together, then you perish together. That realization, these policies, that is very simply put, I think that is how people have realized that. And from 2014 onwards, we have certain interesting experiences when we have built this issue-based unity. First, when the land acquisition ordinance was brought forward by the Narendra Modi government, then you had a land rights movement, or the Bhumi Adhikar Andolan, an issue-based unity of more than 300 organizations of farmers, agriculture workers, Adivasis, Dalits, civil society groups coming together. And when we said we would not just take up the issue of the land acquisition and compensation, but also speak about land rights and forest rights, a few organizations left us. When, in fact, Medha Patkar mentioned that we would go according to the constitution of Baba Saheb Ambedkar and according to the principles of non-violence, a few more organizations left us. Some of these organizations initially were not willing to speak out on important issues like the attacks of the Gorakshaks in the name of fighting against cow slaughter, the killing of Dalits and Muslims which are going on. But in the course of struggle, we could also ensure that the unity broadened over, consensus developed over broader issues. So continuous struggles together, we saw in another about 2 years of struggling together on these issues, that people were willing to speak out against the Gorakshaks, the barbaric attacks that they were launching on the Muslim and Dalit communities. Similarly, the All India Kisan Sangharsh Coordination Committee was again a issue-based unity around the question of remunerative price for crop and freedom from indebtedness. But in the course of struggles, the consensus has widened on broader issues, including on the issues of the working class. These issue-based unities have been responding, not just in terms of issuing circulars, but also taking part actively in the protests in solidarity with the workers. Professor Jyotka mentioned about how singers, Punjabi singers, in fact, people, some of us who rarely used to listen to Punjabi songs, also in the course of the struggle, we have all started listening to many of these songs. And I would say it's not just in Punjabi. You see, this is something in Kannada, is a book on poetry. It's about the struggles by the peasantry. You have similar things. This is another in Kannada. You have in Malayalam a lot of literature, which is not actually, I would say, political literature in the pure sense, which are coming up here in the language of the people, trying to explain why we need to stand together in this time. That is the solidarity that is emerging also. That the beauty of this. I think some questions are surely going to come. How are we from outside going to help? How can we help? I would say, as an organization, All India Kisan Sabha, we have a presence in around 23 states. We have within our own the contributions that has happened, but we have never required to spend for food grains or even Harinderji will also say that neither for food grains, for milk, these have come from the local communities, different kind of people coming out in solidarity with this struggle. That is something new, which we have been seeing from probably the Kisan Long March from Nasik to Mumbai. From then on, these kind of solidarities also emerge. That is something very unique to this struggle.
Thank you very much. Shreya, we have seen several statements from eminent personalities in India and abroad that the world is watching, behave well, right? But that's for the state. But but what do you think the world or the other social movements in India can learn from the farmers' protests?
Well, I think everything that has been said so far, this kind of ability to, somehow work through really long-standing and difficult conflicts and tensions to come together. I think, and identifying what is the really sort of a big challenge, sort of being able to articulate that, well, there is this at various levels, there is the question of the economy, that the ways in which the laws will actually radically restructure agriculture, which kind of forms the material basis on which, in my view, I think a lot of people are also kind of coming together because of that. It's so far reaching that it has all sorts of dimensions, but then to articulate it in terms of the fact that it's an authoritarian regime that you're up against, that there is that there is a need to reconcile or at least work through differences of caste, class. I mean, if you just think about it in terms of the diaspora in the UK, there has been, we know that, there have been reports of, the diaspora mobilizing, and there have been car rallies and all sorts of things, but and which is great, which has, created a lot of visibility. Even in the UK, there have been members of parliament who have raised it. But I think, for example, I think for, if I was to think of it from the point of view of the South Asian diaspora, I would say actually a lot of this mobilization has also been around, this kind of Jat Sikh identity, kind of people who have families back home, and for, for understandable reasons, they kind of invoke those identities and that language only when they kind of express support. And I think that maybe it's an opportunity also for diasporas across the world to think about what kinds of solidarities they can forge, wider solidarities beyond their identities within India, but also kind of South Asians on questions of caste and, on dissent, on communalism. And I think that this should be an opportunity for I think at least the diaspora, if not kind of other parts of the world also, to reevaluate how their political discourses are shaped. So, yeah.
Thank you, Shreya. So, Surinder, you already mentioned about how landless agricultural laborers and Dalits have been coming into the movement, but it's still, the mainstream media still saying that it is still a Punjabi movement or a Haryana movement. It's not in All India peasant movement or farmers movement. How do you understand? How do you reflect on the geopolitical limitations of the movement and its manifestations for the future movement to grow? You're on mute. Surinder, can you unmute yourself, please?
I think as Viju said, this is not something which is new. At some level, it goes back to several years of farmers trying to, at some level, build a new movement. Farmers' movements were very strong in 1980s, and then they kind of declined. And for nearly 3 decades, farmers have not been visible in Indian political and social life. They were somehow marginalized, and they were also internally divided. on caste lines, on regional lines. Left political parties also were not able to kind of make a difference. But more importantly, the farmers, old farmers union that had emerged in the 1980s, they had got fragmented, and that had happened almost everywhere in the country. And for the last 5-6 years, we have seen that these kind of struggles were building up, and Maharashtra case was very interesting, where a large number of people walked, and how middle classes came out in Bombay city and provided them with food and water and everything that they could mobilize on their own. And there have been several other movements in Madhya Pradesh and several other parts of the country. So farmers have been in a lot of distress, and in last 15-20 years, actually since mid-90s, it has been building up. But they had no kind of coming together because of the internal fragmentation of rural society. Rural in India has been fragmented on various lines for various reasons. That's a separate big question. So at this time, it is also time of pandemic. Trains are not, all the trains are not running in India. It's not very easy to be mobile, and people also have, some of them also have anxiety. But the Punjab farmers were somehow, they said it doesn't really matter. They threw away their masks and started marching. I think it was literal throwing away their mask, and that was very, very critical. So to begin with, I think even now the groundswell is really massive in Punjab. If you go to Punjab, almost everyone is part of the movement. There would hardly be anyone who would say that I'm not with farmers. Same is the case with Haryana. But the way state wants to understand, it wants to make it into either a Punjab issue or an issue of the Jats in UP and Haryana, and to some extent Rajasthan, and rest of India is not at all protesting. Well, there are lesser protests there. Also, the issues are not really up in the question of minimum support price is much more an issue for Haryana and Punjab, because that's where support price regime has been functioning well. But farmers associations have also been adding issues. For example, they are saying that there should be support price for other commodities as well. And I think this is a very important moment, because farmers can't depend on the mainstream media to represent them correctly. And mainstream media still carries a lot of influence in the middle classes at some level. Those narratives then percolate down everywhere. And state also feeds into those narratives, and they kind of work together. So this is a very, very complicated situation. Farmers are not really in a very comfortable position politically. So they have to mobilize themselves on various kind of grounds, and they have to work with all kinds of stakeholders, bringing them together. But they're doing it very successfully. I would say that this has been a very, very tough and challenging movement. Until now, they have been extremely successful. Except for that 26th of January, which was also a very kind of strange situation, which was not really farmers doing. There were many other actors involved, we know already. But otherwise, I think the way movements are built, if you look at the history of social movements anywhere in the world, this would be one of the most successful social movements, which is able to bring different sections of population together, different regions, different communities. I would still say that there is a caste class, what one should say, bias in this movement, because it is movement of the landed cultivators, because their issues are kind of primary issues, because the question of land has not been raised in the manner in which, say, some left parties may want to articulate, which may not be sensible to raise it at this stage. We don't want to create conflicts, but at the same time building solidarities, and the kind of conflict, for example, in Punjab, agricultural laborers used to have with farmers, those conflicts have gone away. The number of days they work on farms is much lesser than they used to do, say, 20-30 years back with mechanization. So farm laborers, so-called Dalit communities, have also become more autonomous. So their conflict with local dominant castes has also lessened. That's why they can now identify with them as citizens, as equals. So I think this is something which is kind of telling us many other things, raising many questions, which we will have to empirically engage with and try to find out who were able to kind of come, who were not able to come, what kind of language was used of mobilization, what does it show about India having changed, and what kind of changes that are coming up on ground across regions, within regions, across caste groups, across communities. These are very important issues that I think will come up in due course, but they're already there as political questions for the farmers movement. And I think they're dealing with very, very competently. Farmers leadership is extremely competent. Their coordination, despite all the differences, they're more or less able to present a kind of united face in front of the world for last 3 months that we have been saying, despite all the challenges, despite all the provocations, despite all the differences they internally have, they don't agree on many issues, but they come out in a kind of language which is common, which they don't appear to be that disagreeing on anything.
Thank you, sir. This is really reassuring and encouraging from the ground. So, Harinder, can you also give us the role of women, since you have been the president of Women's Wing organization? So, can you explain us, what is the role of a woman in this struggle, and also talk about some of the problems they face in the struggles?
ਹਰਿੰਦਰ, ਇਹ ਤੁਹਾਡੇ ਲਈ ਸਵਾਲ ਹੈ ਕਿ ਕਿਉਂਕਿ ਤੁਸੀਂ ਔਰਤਾਂ ਦੇ ਵਿੰਗ ਦੀ ਵੀ ਆਗੂ ਹੋ, ਕਿ ਔਰਤਾਂ ਦਾ ਕੀ ਰੋਲ ਰਿਹਾ ਹੈ ਤੇ ਔਰਤਾਂ ਲਈ ਮੁਸ਼ਕਲਾਂ ਵੀ ਕੀ ਰਹੀਆਂ ਨੇ। ਤੇ ਐਕਚੁਅਲੀ 2 ਹੋਰ ਸਵਾਲ ਹਰਿੰਦਰ ਲਈ ਨੇ, ਉਹ ਮੈਂ ਫਿਰ ਤੁਹਾਨੂੰ ਦੱਸਾਂਗੀ। There are 2 more questions for Harinder, so after this one I'll raise those.
ਕਿਸਾਨ ਅੰਦੋਲਨ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਜਿਸ ਹਿਸਾਬ ਨਾਲ ਔਰਤਾਂ ਨੇ ਵੱਡੀ ਸ਼ਮੂਲੀਅਤ ਕੀਤੀ ਹੈਗੀ ਹੈ, ਇਹ ਪਹਿਲਾਂ ਵੀ ਔਰਤਾਂ ਪੰਜਾਬ 'ਚ ਜਦੋਂ ਅੰਦੋਲਨ ਲੜੇ ਜਾਂਦੇ ਸੀ ਉਦੋਂ ਵੀ ਆਉਂਦੀਆਂ ਸੀ, ਪਰ ਜਦੋਂ ਇਹ 3 ਖੇਤੀ ਆਰਡੀਨੈਂਸ ਜਾਰੀ ਹੋਏ ਤੇ ਉਦੋਂ ਜਦੋਂ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਨੂੰ ਦੱਸਿਆ ਕਿ ਇਹ ਜ਼ਮੀਨਾਂ ਕੋਲੋਂ ਖੁੱਸ ਜਾਣੀਆਂ ਨੇ, ਤੇ ਜ਼ਮੀਨ ਨਾਲ ਜਿੰਨਾ ਔਰਤਾਂ ਦਾ ਲਗਾ ਹੈ, ਪਰਿਵਾਰਾਂ ਨਾਲ ਲਗਾ ਹੈਗਾ, ਆਪਣੇ ਬੱਚਿਆਂ ਨਾਲ ਲਗਾ ਹੈਗਾ, ਜਦੋਂ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਨੂੰ ਲੱਗਿਆ ਕਿ ਇਹ ਜ਼ਮੀਨਾਂ ਨਾ ਜੇ ਸਾਡੇ ਕੋਲੇ ਰਹੀਆਂ, ਮੰਡੀ ਬੋਰਡ ਨਾ ਰਿਹਾ, ਮਹਿੰਗਾਈ ਨੇ ਵਧਣਾ, ਤਾਂ ਫਿਰ ਸਾਡੀ ਹਾਲਤ ਜਿਹੜੀ ਉਹ ਹੋਰ ਵੀ ਮਾੜੀ ਹੋਣੀ ਹੈਗੀ ਹੈ, ਹੋਰ ਵੀ ਤੰਗੀਆਂ ਤੁਰਸ਼ੀਆਂ ਹੋਣੀਆਂ ਨੇ, ਘਰ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਖੁਦਕਸ਼ੀਆਂ ਹੋਣੀਆਂ ਨੇ, ਤੇ ਉਹਦਾ ਸੰਤਾਪ ਸਭ ਤੋਂ ਵੱਧ ਔਰਤ ਨੂੰ ਭੋਗਣਾ ਪੈਣਾ ਹੈਗਾ, ਜਿਹਦੇ 'ਚ ਔਰਤਾਂ ਨੇ ਵੱਡੀ ਸ਼ਮੂਲੀਅਤ ਕੀਤੀ ਹੈਗੀ ਹੈ। ਦਿੱਲੀ ਵਾਲੇ ਅੰਦੋਲਨ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਜਾਂ ਪੰਜਾਬ 'ਚ ਲੜਿਆ ਗਿਆ, ਚਾਹੇ ਦਿੱਲੀ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਆਇਆ। ਅਸੀਂ ਪੰਜਾਬ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਜਦੋਂ 18 ਜਨਵਰੀ ਨੂੰ ਕਿਸਾਨ ਔਰਤ ਦਿਵਸ ਮਨਾਇਆ, ਪੰਜਾਬ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ 2 ਥਾਵਾਂ ਤੇ ਔਰਤਾਂ ਦਾ ਵੱਡਾ ਇਕੱਠ ਹੋਇਆ, ਜਿਹਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਯਾਨੀ ਕਿ ਇੱਕ ਥਾਂ 25,000 ਦੀ ਗਿਣਤੀ ਬਰਨਾਲਾ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਔਰਤਾਂ ਦਾ ਇਕੱਠ ਹੋਇਆ ਹਰਜੀਤ ਗਰੇਵਾਲ ਦੇ ਖਿਲਾਫ, ਤੇ ਦੂਸਰਾ ਫਾਜ਼ਿਲਕਾ ਜ਼ਿਲ੍ਹੇ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਸਰਜੀਤ ਜਿਆਨੀ ਦੇ ਘਰ ਦੇ ਮੂਹਰੇ ਹੋਇਆ, ਜੋ ਕਿਸਾਨ ਅੰਦੋਲਨ ਦੇ ਖਿਲਾਫ ਬੋਲ ਰਹੇ ਸੀ ਸਰਕਾਰ ਦੇ ਪੱਖ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਕਿ ਔਰਤਾਂ ਨੂੰ ਘਰਾਂ 'ਚੋਂ ਆਉਣਾ ਬਹੁਤ ਮੁਸ਼ਕਲ ਹੈ, ਖਾਸ ਕਰਕੇ ਪੰਜਾਬ ਵਰਗੇ ਪਛੜੇ ਹੋਏ ਮੁਲਕਾਂ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ, ਜਿੱਥੇ ਔਰਤਾਂ ਨੂੰ ਪੜ੍ਹਾਇਆ ਲਿਖਾਇਆ ਵੀ ਘੱਟ ਜਾਂਦਾ ਹੈ, ਘਰ ਦੀ 4 ਦੀਵਾਰੀ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਬੰਦ ਰੱਖਿਆ ਜਾਂਦਾ ਕਿ ਉਹ ਘਰ ਤੱਕ ਹੀ ਸੀਮਿਤ ਰਹਿਣ। ਪਰ ਇਸ ਕਿਸਾਨ ਅੰਦੋਲਨ ਨੇ ਔਰਤਾਂ ਨੂੰ ਘਰਾਂ 'ਚੋਂ ਬਾਹਰ ਲੈ ਕੇ ਆਂਦਾ, ਉਹ ਅੰਦੋਲਨ ਦਾ ਹਿੱਸਾ ਬਣੀਆਂ ਨੇ, ਵੱਡੀ ਗਿਣਤੀ 'ਚ ਔਰਤਾਂ ਇਸ ਅੰਦੋਲਨ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਆਈਆਂ ਨੇ। ਇਹਨਾਂ ਦੇ ਆਉਣ ਦੇ ਨਾਲ, ਔਰਤਾਂ ਦੇ ਆਉਣ ਦੇ ਨਾਲ ਕੁੱਲ ਅੰਦੋਲਨ ਦਾ ਰੰਗ ਬਦਲਿਆ ਹੈਗਾ, ਅੰਦੋਲਨ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਨਿਖਾਰ ਆਇਆ, ਅੰਦੋਲਨ ਮਜ਼ਬੂਤ ਹੋਇਆ, ਤੇ ਜਿਹੜਾ ਅੰਦੋਲਨ 'ਚ ਬੀਜੇਪੀ ਸਰਕਾਰ ਦੇ ਵੱਲੋਂ ਜਾਂ ਸਮੇਂ-ਸਮੇਂ ਦੀਆਂ ਸਰਕਾਰਾਂ ਦੇ ਵੱਲੋਂ ਕਿਸਾਨਾਂ ਦੇ ਉੱਤੇ ਇਲਜ਼ਾਮ ਲਾਇਆ ਜਾਂਦਾ ਸੀ ਕਿ ਇਹ ਤਾਂ ਵਿਹਲੇ ਨੇ, ਇਹਨਾਂ ਦਾ ਤਾਂ ਕੰਮ ਹੀ ਸੰਘਰਸ਼ ਕਰਨਾ ਹੈ, ਪਰ ਜਦੋਂ ਪਰਿਵਾਰਾਂ ਸਮੇਤ ਔਰਤਾਂ ਆਈਆਂ ਨੇ ਤਾਂ ਸਰਕਾਰ ਨੂੰ ਵੀ ਇਹ ਮੰਨਣਾ ਪਿਆ ਕਿ ਕਿਸਾਨ ਸਹੀ ਲੜ ਰਹੇ ਹੈ, ਤੇ ਸੁਪਰੀਮ ਕੋਰਟ ਨੂੰ ਵੀ ਇਹ ਕਹਿਣਾ ਪਿਆ ਹੈਗਾ ਕਿ ਕਿਸਾਨਾਂ ਦੀ ਲੜਾਈ ਵਾਜਬ ਹੈ, ਸਹੀ ਹੈ, ਕਿਸਾਨ ਸਹੀ ਲੜ ਰਹੇ ਨੇ। ਤੇ ਔਰਤਾਂ ਨੇ ਇਹ ਦਿਖਾਇਆ ਕਿ ਜਿੱਡੀ ਵੱਡੀ ਪੱਧਰ ਤੇ ਔਰਤਾਂ ਆਪਣੇ ਘਰ ਨੂੰ ਬਚਾਉਣ ਦੇ ਵਾਸਤੇ ਸਬਰ ਨਾਲ, ਸੰਤੋਖ ਨਾਲ, ਤਹੱਮਲ ਨਾਲ ਆਪਣਾ ਪਰਿਵਾਰ ਪਾਲਦੀਆਂ ਨੇ, ਸੰਭਾਲਦੀਆਂ ਨੇ। ਤੇ ਇਸ ਅੰਦੋਲਨ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਵੀ ਔਰਤਾਂ ਨੇ ਬਹੁਤ ਵੱਡੀ ਗਿਣਤੀ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਆਈਆਂ ਨੇ, ਬਹੁਤ ਤਹੱਮਲ ਦੇ ਨਾਲ, ਸਬਰ ਦੇ ਨਾਲ, ਸੰਤੋਖ ਦੇ ਨਾਲ ਹਰ ਮੁਸ਼ਕਲ ਦਾ ਟਾਕਰਾ ਕੀਤਾ, ਚਾਹੇ ਉਹ ਮੀਂਹ ਹਨੇਰੀ ਆਈ ਹੈ, ਠੰਡ ਹੈ, ਚਾਹੇ ਉਹ ਇੱਥੇ ਬਹੁਤ ਸਾਰੀਆਂ ਸਮੱਸਿਆਵਾਂ ਸੀ ਜਿਨ੍ਹਾਂ ਨੂੰ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਨੇ ਸਰ ਕੀਤਾ, ਤੇ ਬਹੁਤ ਮਜ਼ਬੂਤੀ ਦੇ ਨਾਲ ਇਸ ਅੰਦੋਲਨ ਦਾ ਹਿੱਸਾ ਬਣ ਕੇ ਅਗਵਾਈ ਕੀਤੀ ਹੈ, ਜਿਹਨੇ ਕੁੱਲ ਦੁਨੀਆ ਦੇ ਲੋਕਾਂ ਦਾ ਧਿਆਨ ਖਿੱਚਿਆ ਹੈਗਾ। ਤੇ ਬਹੁਤ ਸਾਰੀਆਂ ਕੁੜੀਆਂ ਕਾਲਜਾਂ, ਯੂਨੀਵਰਸਿਟੀਆਂ 'ਚ ਪੜ੍ਹਦੀਆਂ, ਚਾਹੇ ਉਹ ਰਵੀ ਦਿਸ਼ਾ ਵਰਗੀਆਂ ਨੇ, ਚਾਹੇ ਗ੍ਰੇਟਾ ਵਰਗੀਆਂ ਨੇ, ਚਾਹੇ ਰਿਹਾਨਾ ਵਰਗੀਆਂ ਨੇ, ਚਾਹੇ ਹੋਰ ਹੈ, ਉਹਨਾਂ ਨੇ ਵੀ ਇਸ ਅੰਦੋਲਨ ਨੂੰ ਸਪੋਰਟ ਕੀਤੀ ਹੈ, ਹਮਾਇਤ ਦਿੱਤੀ ਹੈ, ਇਹਦਾ ਹਿੱਸਾ ਬਣੀਆਂ ਨੇ। ਔਰਤਾਂ ਨੇ ਇਸ ਅੰਦੋਲਨ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਆ ਕੇ ਵੱਡੀ ਸ਼ਮੂਲੀਅਤ ਦੇ ਨਾਲ ਕੁੱਲ ਅੰਦੋਲਨ ਦਾ ਰੂਪ ਹੈ ਜਿਹੜਾ ਉਹ ਬਦਲਿਆ ਹੈਗਾ, ਤੇ ਲੋਕਾਂ ਦੀ, ਦੁਨੀਆ ਦੀ ਨਜ਼ਰ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਔਰਤਾਂ ਦਾ ਜਿਹੜਾ ਰੋਲ ਹੈ ਉਹ ਸਾਹਮਣੇ ਆਇਆ ਕਿ ਔਰਤਾਂ ਕਮਜ਼ੋਰ ਨਹੀਂ, ਔਰਤਾਂ ਨਿਮਾਣੀਆਂ ਨਹੀਂ, ਨਤਾਨੀਆਂ ਨਹੀਂ, ਔਰਤਾਂ ਵੀ ਮਜ਼ਬੂਤ ਨੇ, ਉਹ ਵੀ ਲੜ ਸਕਦੀਆਂ ਨੇ, ਇਤਿਹਾਸ ਸਿਰਜ ਸਕਦੀਆਂ ਨੇ।
This struggle has shown that women are strong, and by by women joining the struggle has become stronger, more beautiful. It has got its own color. We have, and then younger women from universities and colleges have also joined us. So somebody like Disha Ravi, but also Greta and Rihanna. So these women from outside as well. So where earlier the agitation could have just been dismissed as just these people just like to resist, they just like to protest, they're just, as the Prime Minister said, Andolan Jeevis. Now when women came, and women have been part of it right from the start, but when women came with their children, they have taken care of the struggle the way they take care of their homes, with patience, with perseverance, with thoughtfulness, and they've brought that same perseverance to the struggles. They have dealt with rain, with storm, with wind, with bitter cold, and they have used that same skill of keeping the family together. That's what they've brought to the struggle, because they also know that that they are the ones who'd have to suffer the most, who'd have to bear the anguish and the pain of this. So the second question to Harinder, actually in the question answer thing, is how can those of us who are outside support the farmers movement? So Harinder, ek sawal audience to aaya hai ki assi jehde bahar rehne a, assi tuhada kis tarah saath de sakne a?
ਅਸੀਂ ਪਹਿਲਾਂ ਹੀ ਜਿੰਨੇ ਵੀ ਸਾਡੇ ਵਿਦੇਸ਼ਾਂ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਸਾਡੇ ਭੈਣ ਭਾਈ ਨੇ, ਜਿਨ੍ਹਾਂ ਨੇ ਸਾਨੂੰ ਬਹੁਤ ਮਾਣ ਦਿੱਤਾ, ਸਤਿਕਾਰ ਦਿੱਤਾ, ਸਾਡਾ ਹੌਸਲਾ ਵਧਾਈ ਕੀਤੀ ਹੈ, ਸਾਨੂੰ ਪਿੱਛੋਂ ਸਪੋਰਟ ਕੀਤੀ ਹੈਗੀ ਹੈ। ਜਦੋਂ ਅਸੀਂ ਇੱਥੇ ਆਏ ਹਾਂ, ਸਾਨੂੰ NRI ਵੀਰਾਂ ਦੇ ਵੱਲੋਂ, ਭੈਣਾਂ ਦੇ ਵੱਲੋਂ ਬਹੁਤ ਸਾਰਾ ਸਮਾਨ ਵੀ ਭੇਜਿਆ ਗਿਆ, ਸਾਡੀ ਆਰਥਿਕ ਮਦਦ ਵੀ ਕੀਤੀ ਗਈ ਹੈ। ਪਰ ਹੁਣ ਅਸੀਂ ਇਸ ਅੰਦੋਲਨ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਜਿਹੜੀ ਥਾਂ ਤੇ ਅੰਦੋਲਨ ਚੱਲਿਆ ਗਿਆ, ਅਸੀਂ ਇਸ ਗੱਲ ਦੀ ਮੰਗ ਕਰਦੇ ਹਾਂ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਸਾਰੇ ਇਸ ਅੰਦੋਲਨ ਨਾਲ ਜੁੜੇ ਹੋਏ ਲੋਕਾਂ ਦਾ, ਆਸ ਕਰਦੇ ਹਾਂ ਕਿ ਜਿਵੇਂ ਸਾਡੇ ਨਾਲ ਪਹਿਲਾਂ ਤੋਂ ਹੀ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਨੇ ਸਾਨੂੰ ਪੂਰਾ ਸਪੋਰਟ ਕੀਤੀ ਹੈ, ਪੂਰੀ ਥਾਂ ਦਿੱਤੀ ਹੈ, ਸਾਡੀ ਗੱਲ ਦੁਨੀਆ ਪੱਧਰ ਤੱਕ ਪਹੁੰਚਾਈ ਹੈ, ਪੂਰੇ ਮੁਲਕਾਂ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਸਾਡੇ ਹੱਕ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਮਾਰਚ ਵੀ ਹੋਏ ਹੈ। ਤੇ ਹੁਣ ਵੀ ਅਸੀਂ ਇਹ ਕਹਿੰਦੇ ਹਾਂ ਕਿ ਜਿੱਥੇ ਇਹ ਅੰਦੋਲਨ ਚਲਾ ਗਿਆ, ਜਿਹੜੀ ਥਾਂ ਤੇ ਚਲਾ ਗਿਆ, ਹੁਣ ਵੀ ਅਸੀਂ ਸਾਰੇ ਹੀ ਸਾਡੇ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਭੈਣਾਂ ਤੋਂ, ਉਹਨਾਂ ਭਰਾਵਾਂ ਤੋਂ, ਉਹਨਾਂ NRI ਵੀਰਾਂ ਤੋਂ, ਉਹਨਾਂ ਲੋਕਾਂ ਤੋਂ ਇਸ ਗੱਲ ਦੀ ਸਪੋਰਟ ਮੰਗਦੇ ਕਿ ਉਹ ਸਾਡੇ ਨਾਲ ਇਸੇ ਤਰ੍ਹਾਂ ਖੜੇ ਰਹਿਣ, ਇਕਜੁੱਟਤਾ ਦਾ ਜਿਹੜਾ ਸਾਡੇ ਨਾਲ ਹੈਗਾ ਉਹ ਰੱਖਣ। ਇਹ ਲੜਾਈ ਲੰਮੀ ਹੈ, ਇਹ ਜਿੱਤਣ ਤੱਕ ਸਾਡਾ ਜਿਹੜਾ ਉਹ ਸਾਥ ਹੈ, ਇਹ ਸਾਰਿਆਂ ਦੇ ਸਹਿਯੋਗ ਨਾਲ ਹੀ ਇਹ ਅੰਦੋਲਨ ਹੈ ਜਿਹੜਾ ਜਿੱਤਿਆ ਜਾਣਾ। ਅਸੀਂ ਸਾਰਿਆਂ ਦਾ ਇਸ ਪੱਖ ਤੋਂ ਬਹੁਤ ਬਹੁਤ ਧੰਨਵਾਦ ਕਰਦੇ ਹਾਂ, ਉਹਨਾਂ ਨੂੰ ਇਸ ਗੱਲ ਦਾ ਬਹੁਤ ਬਹੁਤ ਧੰਨਵਾਦ ਕਰਦੇ ਹਾਂ ਕਿ ਜਿਨ੍ਹਾਂ ਨੇ ਇਸ ਕਿਸਾਨ ਅੰਦੋਲਨ ਦੇ ਨਾਲ ਸਾਨੂੰ ਸਪੋਰਟ ਕੀਤੀ ਹੈ।
We thank all our brothers and sisters who live abroad for having supported us, shown solidarity, held marches and protests in their own cities. They've also supported us through their love. They've given us some material help, but more than that is the moral, the solidarity, moral support and the solidarity they have shown. This is a long battle. And it's not going to get over right away. So we ask that those of you who are outside stay with us till the end. That's the only way, and stay with us till we win. And then the last question for Harinder is that in light of Professor Jodhkar's point that there is a lot of variation in agricultural lives in different regions, say Punjab compared to Kerala, what is the basis of unity of farmers from different regions, if Harinder can speak to that based on her experience. So Harinder, I ਤੁਹਾਡੇ ਲਈ ਹੈ last question audience ਤੋਂ ਕਿ Professor Jodhkar ਨੇ ਕਿਹਾ ਕਿ ਕਿਸਾਨੀ ਦੇ ਅਲੱਗ-ਅਲੱਗ ਹੈ, ਕਿਸਾਨੀ ਦੀ ਜਿਹੜੀ ਰਿਐਲਿਟੀ ਹੈ, ਜਿਹੜੀ ਸੱਚਾਈ ਹੈ ਉਹ ਅਲੱਗ-ਅਲੱਗ ਹੈ, ਕੇਰਲਾ ਵਿੱਚ ਅਲੱਗ ਹੈ ਪੰਜਾਬ ਤੋਂ, ਤੇ ਤੁਹਾਡੇ ਐਕਸਪੀਰੀਅੰਸ ਵਿੱਚ ਹੁਣ ਤੁਹਾਨੂੰ ਐਕਸਪੀਰੀਅੰਸ ਹੋਇਆ ਜਿਹੜਾ ਚਲੋ ਪਿਛਲੇ 3 ਮਹੀਨੇ ਦੂਜੇ ਜਗ੍ਹਾ ਦੇ ਕਿਸਾਨਾਂ ਨਾਲ ਵੀ ਕੰਮ ਕਰਨ ਦਾ, ਤੇ ਜਿਹੜੇ ਮਜ਼ਦੂਰ ਨੇ, ਇਹਨਾਂ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਕੀ ਤੁਹਾਨੂੰ ਕੀ ਲੱਗਦਾ ਹੈ ਕਿ ਇਹਨਾਂ ਦੀ ਜਿਹੜੀ ਏਕਤਾ ਹੈ ਉਹ ਕਿਸ ਚੀਜ਼ ਤੋਂ ਉੱਤੇ ਆਇਆ ਹੈ? ਕਿਉਂਕਿ ਇਹ
ਅਸੀਂ
ਚਾਹੇ
ਇੱਥੇ
ਅਲੱਗ ਨੇ ਪਰ ਇਹਨਾਂ ਦੀ ਏਕਾ ਕਿਸ ਤੋਂ ਆਇਆ ਹੈ?
ਇਹ ਜਿਹੜਾ ਇਹ ਅੰਦੋਲਨ ਚੱਲ ਰਿਹਾ ਹੈਗਾ ਖੇਤੀ ਕਾਨੂੰਨਾਂ ਨੂੰ ਲੈ ਕੇ, ਕਿਸਾਨੀ ਦੀ ਹਾਲਤ ਨੂੰ ਲੈ ਕੇ, ਮਜ਼ਦੂਰਾਂ ਦੀ ਹਾਲਤ ਨੂੰ ਲੈ ਕੇ, ਕਿ ਇਹਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਇੱਕ ਗੱਲ ਵੱਡੀ ਸਭ ਤੋਂ ਜਿਹਨੇ ਇੱਕ ਦੂਸਰੇ ਨੂੰ ਏਕਤਾ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਬੰਨਿਆ ਹੈਗਾ ਜਾਂ ਏਕਤਾ ਨੂੰ ਮਜ਼ਬੂਤ ਕੀਤਾ ਹੈਗਾ, ਉਹ ਇਹ ਹੈਗੀ ਹੈ ਕਿ ਅੱਡ-ਅੱਡ ਸਟੇਟਾਂ ਦਾ ਅੱਡ-ਅੱਡ ਕਲਚਰ ਹੈ, ਅੱਡ-ਅੱਡ ਧਰਮ ਦੇ ਨਾਲ ਉਹ ਜੁੜੇ ਹੋਏ ਹੈ, ਪਰ ਜਿਹੜੀ ਸਾਡੀ ਲੁੱਟ ਹੈ, ਜਿਹੜੀਆਂ ਨੀਤੀਆਂ ਨੇ ਉਹ ਸਾਰੇ ਸੂਬਿਆਂ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਇੱਕੋ ਹੀ ਹਕੂਮਤ ਦੇ ਵੱਲੋਂ ਲਾਗੂ ਕੀਤੀਆਂ ਜਾ ਰਹੀਆਂ ਨੇ, ਤੇ ਸਾਡਾ ਦੁਸ਼ਮਣ ਹੈ ਜਿਹੜਾ ਉਹ ਸਾਂਝਾ ਹੈਗਾ। ਇਸ ਕਰਕੇ ਜਾਨੀ ਕਿ ਜਿਹੜੀ ਸਾਡੀ, ਚਾਹੇ ਸਾਨੂੰ ਇੱਕ ਦੂਸਰੇ ਦੀ ਭਾਸ਼ਾ ਨਹੀਂ ਆਉਂਦੀ ਹੈਗੀ, ਸਾਨੂੰ ਹਿੰਦੀ, ਪੰਜਾਬੀ ਵਾਲਿਆਂ ਨੂੰ ਹਿੰਦੀ ਨਹੀਂ ਸਮਝ ਆਉਂਦੀ ਤੇ ਹਿੰਦੀ ਬੋਲਣ ਵਾਲਿਆਂ ਨੂੰ ਪੰਜਾਬੀ ਭਾਸ਼ਾ ਨਹੀਂ ਸਮਝ ਆਉਂਦੀ, ਪਰ ਸਾਨੂੰ ਆਪਣੇ ਸੰਘਰਸ਼ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਇੱਕ ਦੂਸਰੇ ਦੇ ਦਿਲੋਂ ਸਪੋਰਟ ਦਾ, ਦਿਲੋਂ ਸਾਂਝ ਦਾ ਪਤਾ ਲੱਗਦਾ ਹੈ। ਇਸ ਕਰਕੇ ਸਾਡਾ ਜਿਹੜਾ ਇਹ ਅੰਦੋਲਨ ਹੈ ਇਹ ਮਜ਼ਬੂਤ ਹੋ ਰਿਹਾ, ਇੱਕ ਦੂਜੇ ਨਾਲ ਜੋਟੀ ਪੈ ਰਹੀ ਹੈ। ਕੇਰਲਾ, ਉੜੀਸਾ, ਉੱਤਰਾਖੰਡ, ਯੂਪੀ, ਮੱਧ ਪ੍ਰਦੇਸ਼, ਪੰਜਾਬ, ਹਰਿਆਣਾ, ਰਾਜਸਥਾਨ, ਜਾਨੀ ਕਿ ਇਹ ਇਕਜੁੱਟ ਹੋ ਕੇ ਇਹਨਾਂ ਕਾਨੂੰਨਾਂ ਦੇ ਖਿਲਾਫ, ਇਹਨਾਂ ਨੀਤੀਆਂ ਦੇ ਖਿਲਾਫ ਲੜ ਰਹੇ ਆ। ਇਹੀ ਇਹਦਾ ਸਭ ਤੋਂ ਵੱਡਾ ਵਿਸ਼ਾਲ ਏਕੇ ਦੀ ਗੱਲ ਹੈ, ਇੱਕ ਦੂਜੇ ਨਾਲ ਇਕਜੁੱਟਤਾ ਦੀ ਗੱਲ ਹੈ। ਇੱਥੇ ਜਦੋਂ ਅਸੀਂ ਗੱਲਬਾਤ ਕਰਦੇ ਹਾਂ, ਇੱਕ ਦੂਜੇ ਬਾਰੇ ਪਤਾ ਲੱਗਦਾ ਹੈ, ਤਾਂ ਸਾਰੇ ਹੀ ਲੋਕਾਂ ਦੀ ਕਿਰਤ ਕਰਨ ਵਾਲੇ ਜਿਹੜੇ ਲੋਕ ਹੈ, ਚਾਹੇ ਉਹ ਕਿਸਾਨ ਹੈ ਚਾਹੇ ਮਜ਼ਦੂਰ ਹੈ, ਉਹਨਾਂ ਦੀ ਹਾਲਤ ਬਹੁਤ ਮਾੜੀ ਹੈ। ਉਹ ਲੁੱਟੇ ਜਾ ਰਹੇ ਹੈ, ਉਹਨਾਂ ਨੂੰ ਲੁੱਟਿਆ ਜਾ ਰਿਹਾ। ਇਸ ਕਰਕੇ ਜਾਨੀ ਕਿ ਇਹ ਲੜਾਈ ਹੈ ਜਿਹੜੀ ਇੱਕ ਦੂਜੇ ਨਾਲ ਸਾਂਝੀ ਹੈ, ਇਸੇ ਕਰਕੇ ਇਹ ਜਿਹੜਾ ਇਕੱਠ ਹੈ ਇਹ ਵੱਡਾ ਹੋ ਰਿਹਾ, ਇੱਕ ਦੂਜੇ ਨਾਲ ਜੋਟੀ ਹੈ ਜਿਹੜੀ ਉਹ ਪੈ ਰਹੀ ਹੈ।
Although our languages may be different, our cultures may be different, a person speaking in Hindi may not understand someone speaking in Punjabi, but people from Kerala, Madhya Pradesh, Uttarakhand, Orissa, all of us, those who work, the workers, we have the same enemy, and that is the present system and the laws that they have inflicted upon us, and that is the basis of our unity.
So Viju and Harinder, we understand that the farmers' protest against the farm laws is a first step or a launching pad for a bigger battle that Harinder just mentioned. But there is a section of scholars or academics who I would call establishment epistemic brokers. They're trying to their voice to the state or the corporations, and they've been doing their business that all these laws are good for the country or for the farmers. But we know that this farm law are part of a bigger agrarian crisis. I mean, and we also know that just repealing the farm laws, the heaven doesn't fall on the earth. But from your understanding, taking the experience of the farm protest, what is your alternative vision for the existing agrarian crisis? And also wonder how your work in agrarian situation has been feeding to the current protest, and what is your alternative vision for the future based on these movements?
This is for me.
For Viju and Harinder, maybe you can also respond.
Yeah, sorry. Yeah, I just.
Actually, also a bit into the earlier question about how it is only in Punjab, this narrative, that also is not true. If you look at the, just a few days back, you had a rail roko stopping the trains across the country. More than 600 spots across the country. You had farmers sitting on the rails stopping trains. So that similarly, burning of these acts and effigies of the Prime Minister and Adani and Ambanis who have come to symbolize this corporate loot over the last many years. That also has taken place in thousands and thousands of places across the country. So, and if you look at the protest sites here, from Tripura and Assam in the east to Gujarat and Rajasthan in the west, and you have also from Jammu and Kashmir to Kanyakumari, you have every state participating. And if you look at some of those who have come from Maharashtra, a large number of them, the tribal farmers from there, a big number of women in that, people coming all the way from Kerala. There's no, it's not easy to travel in these times of lockdown. More than 1,000 farmers coming from Kerala in support. And every state having protest. The tractor rally also, you had massive participation, not just in and around Delhi, but also in other states. So that is something which the media has systematically tried to not show or not report or not televise at all. So that is something which we have seen. Here now, regarding the academics and their role, you termed it epistemic brokerage. But Professor Jyotka rightly mentioned from 91 onwards, when the neoliberal economic policies have started in our country in a big way, from then you have academics for neoliberalism. They are the entire effort is to sell this idea of liberalization, privatization, and globalization. Each of these decisions, cutting of subsidies, withdrawal from public investment in agriculture, rural development, also according to the WTO, IMF, World Bank, how calling for withdrawal of agriculture subsidies, food subsidies, withdrawing from public stock holding. That is something which is being articulated through these acts now. So those of academics who have taken such a positions, they have been in the good books of the government and also the courts of our country. We see how the expert committee was set up recently, and we all know what someone like Ashok Gulati's position has been over the many years, and how that is going to, his being in the committee is going to in any way be coming out with some recommendation in line with what the farmers are expecting. On another count, regarding what is our alternative, that is something from in 92, when the new agriculture policies were coming in. We, as an organization, we came with an alternative agriculture policy. Some of the organizations of the farmers at that time were taken in by the campaign that Indian farmers would get international prices or in dollars for their crops. It took almost 2 decades for a good number of those organizations to realize that these set of policies have led to this kind of a crisis in our country. And now many of them who then supported these policies are also coming out in protest against that. So if we are talking about, Professor Jyotka mentioned some of the issues like land and forest rights. That is something more closer to us. Those are very fundamental demands that we need. We have been taking up in our struggles also. But there are, just by withdrawal of these 3 acts, is it going to end the woes of farmers in our country? There is a need for reversal of the set of policies, free trade policies, trade liberalization, deregulation of the agriculture input industry, and so on. That is something which is also required. Other than that, to broaden the struggle, how you could take up the issues of unemployment, to bring in the youth, the caste atrocities, taking a strong position against caste atrocities, how you bring the minorities who are systematically facing an attack, the women, and broaden this unity of all oppressed sections of the working class and the peasantry around a set of alternatives which will be appealing to much wider sections. That would also be hinged on the issue of democratic rights and protection of the constitution of our country.
Yeah, it's good to see that, farmers' laws are not just in isolation. They are part of the bigger picture. And now the farmers protesting against farmers' laws are connecting to this bigger picture. Maybe we would like to also hear from Harinder, because she represents an organization. What is her union's vision, alternative vision for the agrarian crisis? Not necessarily just the 3 laws.
Harinder, ਤੁਹਾਡਾ ਜਿਹੜਾ ਸੰਗਠਨ ਹੈ, ਉਹਨਾਂ ਦਾ ਕੀ ਵਿਜ਼ਨ ਹੈ? ਉਹ ਤੁਸੀਂ ਕੀ ਚਾਹੁੰਦੇ ਹੋ ਕਿ ਜੇ ਤੁਹਾਨੂੰ ਹੋਏ ਅਸੀਂ ਇਸ ਤਰ੍ਹਾਂ ਦਾ ਸਮਾਜ ਬਣਾਉਣਾ ਹੈ, ਤੁਸੀਂ ਕਿਹੋ ਜਿਹਾ ਚਾਹੋਗੇ?
ਸਾਡਾ ਜਿਹੜਾ ਸੰਗਠਨ ਹੈ ਬੀਕੇਯੂ ਏਕਤਾ ਗਰਾਹਾਂ, ਉਹਨਾਂ ਦਾ ਇਹ ਸਾਡਾ ਇਹ ਯਾਨੀ ਕਿ ਜੋ ਸਾਡਾ ਐਲਾਨਨਾਮਾ ਹੈ, ਜਿਹਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਅਸੀਂ ਆਪਣਾ ਮਕਸਦ ਦੱਸਿਆ ਹੋਇਆ ਹੈ ਕਿ ਅਸੀਂ ਇਹ ਚਾਹੁੰਦੇ ਹਾਂ ਕਿ ਇੱਥੇ ਧਰਮ ਨਿਰਪੱਖ ਹੋਵੇ, ਕਿ ਧਰਮ ਤੋਂ ਸਭ ਲੋਕ ਉੱਪਰ ਉੱਠਣ। ਜਿਹਨੇ ਵੀ ਕਿਸੇ ਨੇ ਧਰਮ ਨੂੰ ਮੰਨਣਾ ਉਹ ਆਪਦੇ ਤੌਰ ਤੇ ਧਰਮ ਨੂੰ ਮੰਨੇ, ਸਾਰੇ ਧਰਮਾਂ ਦਾ ਸਤਿਕਾਰ ਹੋਵੇ, ਜਾਤ ਪਾਤ ਨਾਂ ਦੀ ਕੋਈ ਚੀਜ਼ ਨਾ ਹੋਵੇ, ਜਾਤ ਪਾਤ ਤੋਂ ਉੱਪਰ ਉੱਠਿਆ ਹੋਵੇ। ਮਜ਼ਦੂਰ ਵਰਗ ਹੈ ਜਿਹੜਾ ਉਹ ਵੀ ਚੰਗੀ ਜ਼ਿੰਦਗੀ ਜੀਵੇ, ਕਿਸਾਨ ਵੀ, ਨੌਜਵਾਨ ਵੀ, ਔਰਤਾਂ ਵੀ। ਕਿ ਜੋ ਭਗਤ ਸਿੰਘ ਦੀ ਵਿਚਾਰਧਾਰਾ, ਜੋ ਭਗਤ ਸਿੰਘ ਨੇ ਕਿਹਾ ਹੈਗਾ ਕਿ ਮਨੁੱਖ ਹੱਥੋਂ ਮਨੁੱਖ ਦੀ ਲੁੱਟ ਜਿੰਨਾ ਚਿਰ ਖਤਮ ਨਹੀਂ ਹੁੰਦੀ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਚਿਰ ਇਹ ਜੰਗ ਜਾਰੀ ਹੈ। ਕਿ ਅਸੀਂ ਮਨੁੱਖ ਹੱਥੋਂ ਮਨੁੱਖ ਦੀ ਲੁੱਟ ਖਤਮ ਕਰਨਾ ਚਾਹੁੰਦੇ ਹਾਂ ਭਗਤ ਸਿੰਘ ਦੇ ਵਿਚਾਰਾਂ ਵਾਲਾ। ਜਿਹੋ ਜਿਹਾ ਭਗਤ ਸਿੰਘ ਸਮਾਜ ਸਿਰਜਣਾ ਚਾਹੁੰਦਾ ਸੀ ਕਿ ਜਿੱਥੇ ਹਰ ਮਨੁੱਖ ਬਹੁਤ ਵਧੀਆ ਜ਼ਿੰਦਗੀ ਜਿਉਵੇਂ, ਉਹ ਸਮਾਜ ਦੀ ਅਸੀਂ ਸਿਰਜਣਾ ਕਰਨੀ ਚਾਹੁੰਦੇ ਹਾਂ। ਉਸ ਤਰ੍ਹਾਂ ਦਾ ਅਸੀਂ ਸਮਾਜ ਹੈ ਜਿਹੜਾ ਉਹ ਲੈ ਕੇ ਆਉਣਾ ਚਾਹੁੰਦੇ ਹਾਂ, ਜਿਹਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਔਰਤਾਂ, ਨੌਜਵਾਨ, ਸਭ ਮਜ਼ਦੂਰ, ਕਿਸਾਨ, ਸਭ ਕਿਰਤੀ ਲੋਕ ਚੰਗੀ ਜ਼ਿੰਦਗੀ ਹੈ ਜਿਹੜੀ ਉਹ ਆਪਣੀ ਜਿਉ ਸਕਣ।
In the manifesto of the BKU Ugraha, they follow the principles and ideas of Shahid Bhagat Singh. It is secular, it is anti-caste. They oppose the loot of humans by other humans. They want workers and people who work to live with prosperity, to achieve their highest potential, and for both women and young people as well, to live in prosperity and freedom.
Sure. Shreya and Surendra, so the establishment has been, as already discussed, coming up with new vocabulary, new labels. They started off with urban Naxal, then Andolan Jeevi, and they also mentioned sacred Andolan Jeevi, not the anarchic Andolan Jeevi. They're also talking about, the Modi government goes out to the world and requests for foreign direct investments in the name of Make in India. But they're also using the FDI in different form now of foreign destructive ideology if somebody talks from outside. So how do you understand this government tactics, and what are the repercussions going to be? You're on mute, Shreya.
Okay, do you want me to?
Yeah, sure, yeah.
Yeah. Okay, so I think I said before that the government basically wants to discredit, the movement, and obviously by, when it says, the FDI, it was apart from the fact that it was extremely crass, it is also then to discredit the kind of international solidarity that I suppose, this forum is extending to it. Now, I think the issue is that now that you see the farmers movement has been so successful in quashing a lot of these in these terms and these labels, so it's kind of made the the kind of the authoritarian, the kind of the complete and blatant disregard of the constitution or the rights of citizens on full display. And I mean, we're seeing all this repression now, but I mean, I mean, as you can see, the movements also have strategies for that. Like a lot of the leaders have been advising, all the hundreds and thousands of people who seem to have received notices from the police to not actually attend to them. They have a lawyers committee that is also attending to the issues, the kind of repression that the state is facing. I think it shows that the state is, the establishment is cornered, and this is obviously, ultimately, it's just a political battle, and one has to see how it unfolds. But if you don't mind, and I can just say one thing around, some of the academics as, epistemic brokers or academics for neoliberalism. I think just to add that, I suppose as academics, those of us who are not, for neoliberalism, I think it is also our responsibility to call them out in terms of, dismantling the evidence they use, dismantling their assumptions through different kinds of work. I think a very good example was I think the piece that Ritika Khera, Sudha Narayan, and Prakhar Gupta wrote on MSPs in the Hindu, and dispelling myths around how MSP is not something that is now restricted only to some farmers in some states. So I think that kind of engagement is something that is the responsibility of the other kind of academic. So, thanks.
Thank you, Shreya. Surendra, can you also can briefly give us your take on farmers' protests are part of the internal matter? Outside has no business to do with it. How do you respond to that?
That's to
You're on mute, Surendra. Can you unmute, please?
Can you repeat the question?
So, I mean, there's been narrative that farmers' protests have been internal matter of the country. Outside has no business to deal with it. How do you understand these internal, external positions?
You were talking about songs. Rihanna has been adopted by Punjab. So she's the daughter of Punjab, and her children, Nanke would be in Punjab. There's actually a song of this. So who is an Indian, who is a foreigner? I don't think that's an issue any longer. And nobody really cares for it. I see one of the most interesting thing about these farmers movement is that they have not tried to defend themselves against the charges levied by the mainstream media or by sections of the state. They have gone on doing what they were doing, and they have been doing it very confidently. It's not even for a moment they felt defensive when Rihanna kind of tweeted in favor of farmers movement. And actually there was a song within 2 days, within 1 day, I think Diljit Dosanjh sang a song which within like 1 week had more than 5 million views, and now perhaps it has 8 or 9 million views. And so see, this is very interesting, the kind of legitimacy that the state and the establishment thought it had. In this movement, they seem to be completely losing it. I mean, somebody, there are this film actor who keeps tweeting against any kind of progressive movement. She is now lost out. So anyone who tries to, I think there is something very interesting happening through farmers movement. There's a new kind of public narrative which is taking shape, where farmers movement has not been delegitimized at all. Right? They've been trying their best one way or the other, and they give up on that. Now, for example, in order to delegitimize farmers movement, on the one hand, they would say that this is a foreign intervention. Then they would identify another black woman from America, asking her to tweet in favor of farmers movement. So it also shows bankruptcy of the establishment. I think they don't really know how to deal with this movement. And I think it also is bankruptcy. I'm using this word very self-consciously, of the establishment academia, which is mostly economists who are trained in these kind of new language of reforms. Reform is a positive word, but here reform means only privatization. Keep privatizing, privatize everything, privatize your breathing also perhaps tomorrow. So how can you privatize everything? I mean, this is something which is amazing. No country has done that. Even America is not so privatized, so much privatized, and as India is becoming. So this is something which is not sustainable. And it's very unfortunate that instead of being a third party, the state has become the oppositional party to farmers. This is a kind of class struggle at some level, where farming interests and popular livelihood interests are confronting corporate capital. So the state should be a mediator in between. Historically, that's how state has been everywhere. But here, the state seems to be completely, single-mindedly on one side. So politically, it is not sustainable. I think it's kind of, that's why delegitimization of farmers movement would be very, very hard. And they have not been able to do it in the last 3 months, and they will not succeed in doing that. So this is something which is for us also a learning experience. Initially, many of us were worried. I also wrote a piece on it. They will not succeed, and they actually have not succeeded. And somehow the other farmers movement again come up, and they have a kind of moral what one should say advantage, and that moral advantage comes from various things. This is not something which state understands. And establishment economists, when they tweet against the farmers movement, they lose legitimacy, and it's very hard to, at some level, even popular media, wherever anyone who is, people have stopped watching TV. the Godi media and stuff like that. So that is something which is going very far. And that's why Government of India is like, yesterday only they have brought out new guidelines for social media, that what you can show. So the social media is becoming so popular, and these are young people. They can't speak English, a word of English, and they're very popular on social media. They have their own channels, and there are dozens of new channels that have come up, perhaps more than dozen in last 3 months, which are pro-farmers in some way or the other. They're trying to communicate. So there are these parallel channels of communication, parallel channels of, dialogue and negotiation and talking about across regions. Gender question is, again, you were talking about, is amazing what we were talking about earlier. This is also a school, right, where actually literally men are learning how to cook and how to take care of themselves. They have never done it all their lives. And many people are saying that now life will become easier for women at home. So it's not only that women have been on the borders sitting on dharna, but also it's the men who are cooking food, who have never done it before, and feeding their women. And that itself is something which kind of should be seen as a political action, and which movement is in some sense adding to a new kind of notion of a normal life in a very patriarchal and sexist society like India.
Yeah, glad to know these transformative moments within the movement. So I'm cognizant of the time, and it has been a very stimulating discussion we have so far. But before we conclude, I would like to request Harinder Bindu to recite a poem or a song, since Surendra Jodhkar just mentioned about the songs. As I also know that Harinder is also a cultural activist. Harinderji, can you please sing a song or read a poem or whatever you want to, and we will end with that.
ਸੋ ਜੀ ਹਰਿੰਦਰ ਜੀ, ਫਿਰ ਅਸੀਂ ਹੁਣ ਖਤਮ ਕਰਨੇ ਆ ਅੱਜ ਦੀ ਗੱਲ। ਪਰ ਖਤਮ ਕਰਨ ਤੋਂ ਪਹਿਲਾਂ ਜੇ ਤੁਸੀਂ ਕੋਈ ਗੀਤ ਸੁਣਾ ਦਿਓ ਜਾਂ ਕੁਝ ਬੋਲੀ ਪਾ ਦਿਓ ਤੇ ਵਧੀਆ ਸਮਾਪਤੀ ਹੋਏਗੀ।
ਵੈਸੇ ਮੈਨੂੰ ਬੋਲਣਾ ਆਉਂਦਾ, ਗੀਤ ਨਹੀਂ ਗਾਉਣਾ ਆਉਂਦਾ। ਮੈਂ ਤੁਹਾਨੂੰ ਜਿਹੜਾ ਗੀਤ ਗਾਇਆ ਸੀ ਮੈਂ ਉਹ ਤੁਹਾਨੂੰ ਸੁਣਾਵਾਂਗੀ। ਮੈਨੂੰ ਬਹੁਤਾ ਗਾਉਣਾ ਨਹੀਂ ਆਉਂਦਾ, ਬੋਲਣਾ I
don't speak a lot, but I speak more than I sing, but I will make an effort and I will sing.
मैं कोशिश करनी है। देश है प्यारा सानू जिंदगी प्यारी नालों, देश तो प्यारे एदे लोक कहानियां। असां तोड़ देनी लहू पीनी जो कहानियां, असां तोड़ देनी। लुट्टियां बहारां असीं मोड़ के ले आउणियां ने, आखदे ने लोकी हिक्कां ठो कहानियां। हड़ लोकता दा केड़ा सकूरो कहानियां, हड़ लोकता दा। तेरी पहलियां दा नूर चढ़े देख के सरूर, तोड़ देंगे गरूर तेरा जोर वे लड़ा। हुण चलना नी तेरा कोई जोर वे लड़ा, हुण चलना नी। आलना तां बनेगा आकाश विच, और भी बसेगा विच नवें जुग दा। सानू सुरगां दा लारा हुण नईओ पुगदा, सानू सुरगां दा लारा हुण नईओ पुगदा।
वाह, बल्ले।